Chapter 329. Here it comes. Sensing that her yin-yang spell formation had been activated, the grand traveling abyss serpent god's gigantic body helped Hanyuan block a sneak attack from her right rear. 3 half-meter-long gashes appeared on the serpent god's body. Smelly blood gushed out of the wounds and splattered all over the ground. His opponent had also revealed himself in this ambush. It was a black humanoid monster. The reason why he only used the monotonous adjective black was because there seemed to be no better way to describe the person's appearance than this word. It was pure darkness. Even the scattered sunlight that shone through the canopy did not affect the monster's appearance. It was like a black hole that swallowed all light and color. However, from the silhouette she could vaguely see that the monster was humanoid. There seemed to be triangular cat ears on its head. Its hands were more like terrifying claws than hands. The grand traveling abyss serpent god hasn't recovered? Hanyuan glanced at the wounds on her Shikigami's body while being wary of her opponent. Logically speaking, the Shikigami's body was formed by the curse power she provided. Their bodies were still in the cocoon or their habitat in another dimension. Therefore, even if they were injured, as long as they were not on the verge of death, they could quickly heal with enough curse power. As the most outstanding yin-yang master of this generation, Hanyuan knew that she could not be compared to gods like Chihaya Fukuyama. However, her curse power was one of the best among all yin-yang masters. It should not be difficult for her to heal her Shikigami's physical injuries. Of course, the damage caused by Mo Li's punch when he destroyed the giant door was a different matter. However, the grand traveling abyss serpent god's injuries showed no signs of healing. Hanyuan could even vaguely feel an ominous force slowly eating away at the grand traveling abyss serpent god's body through the scaly talisman she used as a medium to summon the grand traveling abyss serpent god. Fortunately, the great traveling abyss serpent god was a deity. Not only was its body huge, but in the legends of Japan, it could only be chased away and not killed. Therefore, its vitality was much stronger than most Shikigami. Even with such a wound on its body, it would not die easily. You're not going to attack so easily after your first attack. While analyzing the enemy's fighting style, Hanyuan asked Wu Yejin, who seemed to have not recovered, "What's wrong with the tourists here? How did you become like this?" Although the tourists on the ground looked miserable, if one looked carefully, they would find that these tourists were not dead, and their life auras were not weak. Even with the distant eyes of the Blossom Courtyard, it seemed that they had just fallen asleep due to exhaustion for a long time. These tourists all fainted for no reason. Wu Yejin leaned on her spear and took a deep breath. Then she said, "I'm exhausted after exchanging a few blows with it." "Is that so? Was it the ability to absorb the enemy's energy? Or was it a curse that would quickly deplete the opponent's stamina and spirit? In addition, was it because Wu Yejin was holding him back that he didn't hurt those who had already lost their mobility? Or was it because of this guy's own rules?" Hanyuan's brain worked quickly. The monks who threw flying swords and smashed magic treasures at Huasha's side were beaten half to death and could still escape. As long as their souls were not scattered, they could continue to cause trouble with their primordial spirits. The onmyoges of Japan's side were only at the level of ordinary martial artists. Not to mention the Dongfeng missiles, even an Uzi submachine gun could turn them into sieves. Of course, there were advantages to this. For example, the requirements for onmyoges themselves were not high. As long as they passed an ordinary onmyoges course, they could be mass-produced. Compared with the precious cultivators, onmyoges were much more common. Often, in a battle against a Class B demon, 3 or 4 onmyoges would not be able to show the demon's strength. Therefore, when confronting demons, it was more common to analyze the enemy's fighting style and use targeted tactical arrangements to deal with the opponent. As long as the onmyoges could guess the enemy's true form, they would have a good chance of gaining the upper hand or even winning the battle. Of course, when faced with a monster like the bull demon, which was undefeated even in myths, an ordinary onmyoges could only look on in confusion. But if even Wu Yejin could exchange a few blows with the bull demon, did it mean that the bull demon's physical skills were superb? If that was the case, fighting it with Bajiquan might not be a bad choice. Ever since she had seen the power of physics with Su Shenxing, this onmyoges way of thinking seemed to have changed subtly. Just then the enemy made its move again. But Hanyuan wasn't fighting alone either. Almost at the same time, a huge snake's mouth shot out from the ground. Like a trolley car, it swallowed the black shadow that was charging at it like lightning. Now was the time. Hanekyu and Yuan put her right index and middle fingers together and pointed at the great traveling abyss snake god's head that had sunk back into the ground. A few torii covered in talismans appeared out of thin air and smashed into the ground, suppressing the snake's head under the torii. Are you sure you won't let your spirit-branded retainer rebel by doing this? Wu Yejin complained behind her. It's okay. I heard that when Saint Martha, one of the 12 leftover women of Christianity, came to this world as a heroic spirit under the summons of the Knights of the Sword, the noble artifact she could use was the evil dragon she had subdued, Tarask, to suppress the enemy. Then Saint Martha would use her fists to smash Tarask and the dragon into pieces. Hanekyu Yuan's attention was still focused on the torii. She said casually, "That's why people gave her the nickname the Iron Fist Leftover Woman." Where did you hear such a strange rumor? Wu Yejin wanted to complain, but she wasn't familiar with the history of Christianity, and she wasn't from the inner world, so she could only mutter softly to herself, "Oh no. Miss Five Leaves Run. I was very careful not to say is it done? Or did you succeed? Or anything like that." "No, this has nothing to do with flags." Hanekyu Yuan answered subconsciously. She then tried her best to maintain the seal and said to Wu Yejin, "You've vaguely noticed it too, right? This university is that person's school. The enemy is unexpectedly difficult to deal with. I'm afraid that only that person has a chance of winning." The next instant the ground exploded and torii disappeared. Countless pieces of the gigantic snake's body, or rather corpses, fell to the ground. White smoke rose from the corpses as they slowly transformed into dots of light and disappeared. At the center of the explosion, the black figure appeared in front of them, unharmed. Chapter 330. Even though there was a gem like Qin Xingyan in front of her, Song Yu still easily attracted everyone's attention when she appeared. Since Chang Shaoxian was not participating in the competition, she was undoubtedly the focus of the audience. Although she was speechless when she found out that Qin Xingyan was actually replacing Su Shenxing in the competition. But even so, Jiangjin University's beauty pageant did not have anything special. There were only old-fashioned methods like self-introductions, talent shows, and riddles. As time passed, the competition gradually came to an end. Song Yu had already sorted out her emotions and was ready for the final confession. Our protagonist, before the mutation happened, patrolled around the school and did not find anything unusual. Then he stayed in a corner below the stage to watch the competition. It's almost time for the voting of the beauty pageant. I think all the contestants have something to say to the audience, right? If you want to canvass for votes, this is your last chance. I hope that everyone will grab this last chance and show everyone your charm. The host spoke loudly into the microphone in an inciting tone. As expected, the other contestants said something that they hoped the audience would support them. Even Qin Xingyan, who had the intention to be perfunctory, could not say things like, "I'm just here to watch the fun. Please don't vote for me." He could only say some nonchalant words to canvass for votes. In addition, Qin Xingyan was concerned about what Song Yu was going to do next. This was one of the main reasons why he was not interested. To be honest, Qin Xingyan admired Song Yu very much. Although Qin Xingyan's thinking was somewhat old-fashioned due to the different education she received when she was young, this did not affect her IQ. It also did not affect her as a girl. Naturally, she could understand what Song Yu said on the rooftop. Although when she left the Bailu Temple, the teachers who were frightened by Su Shenxing did not say it directly, the way they said, "The future of the Bailu Temple depends on you," was still vivid in her mind. It was unforgettable. Indeed, the elders of the Bailu Temple hoped that Qin Xingyan could exchange her future for the future of the Bailu Temple. It seemed a little despicable, and for an ordinary girl in the prime of her life, it was too heavy. In fact, even Qin Xingyan herself felt a little uncomfortable at first. But as she got to know more about Su Shenxing, she began to unconsciously be attracted to him. He obviously had the power to subvert the world, but he was never proud of it. Instead, he was more self-restrained than anyone else. Although occasionally, due to the habit of being a hero, he would occasionally obtain the dropped money from his enemies after defeating them. This was something worth complaining about. Even though he said that it was troublesome, he would always lend a helping hand when others were in trouble. The kind of casual sexiness that did not care about anything other than Emoli was also very cool, although it was just a passerby's face. That being said, Qin Xingyan had never thought of confessing to Su Shenxing. As a more traditional woman in the Celestial Empire, even if Su Xinxing had never mentioned it, Qin Xingyan could understand from Su Xinxing's words and actions that Su Xinxing probably had a heavy past. He did not know what happened in the past, but the only thing he could confirm was that Su Xinxing already had someone in his heart during that time. It was just a pity that even the Great Snack Method, which had worked countless times in the past, was unable to obtain any clues from Jasmine. It was because of this that Qin Xingyan had never thought of taking the initiative to confess. He only planned to silently stay by Mo Li's side. It was also because of this that Qin Xingyan admired Song Yu, who clearly knew this, but still made up her mind to take the initiative to confess to Su Xinxing. At least in terms of courage, this ordinary girl had far surpassed him. It was impossible for Qin Xingyan to give her blessings from the bottom of her heart for her love rival Song Yu. But the girl would occasionally subconsciously wonder, if Song Yu's confession was successful, would that mean she would also have a chance? The person who will be speaking next, I'm sure everyone is familiar with her. She won the title of Newcomer King half a year ago, and was regarded as the most likely to become the next Queen of Music, Miss Song Yu. Probably even the organizers felt that Song Yu was very likely to win the beauty contest, so they deliberately arranged for her to speak last, perhaps to use her as the finale. In a sense, what she was going to say next was indeed qualified to be the finale of the show. After taking the microphone from the host, Song Yu was silent for a moment. All the lights above her head shone on her. Although it was daytime, the curtains on the surrounding windows of the auditorium were drawn, so the spacious and huge room seemed a little dim. Therefore, the lights undoubtedly played the role of a spotlight, and all of a sudden, everyone's attention was focused on Song Yu. In fact, the previous contestants also had this kind of treatment, but at most they only attracted some attention. They did not have Song Yu's, who gave people the feeling that the girl herself was the center of everything, as if she was shining. Song Yu thought that she had long been used to the feeling of being the center of attention. After all, the number of people in her concert was much more than this small auditorium. Words like stage fright should not have anything to do with her. But now she found that when she walked onto the stage, her hand holding the microphone was slightly trembling. Her throat was dry, as if smoke was going to come out. Her head was a little dizzy and her face was hot. She did not know if it was because of the heat of the lights or if it was just her own fear. She had clearly made up her mind, but when she stood on the stage she could not say a word. She had already reached this step, how could she shrink back? Song Yu took a deep breath, trying to calm herself down. 159 days, she slowly opened her mouth and said, "Perhaps I have seen you a long time ago, but I officially know you, and because of you, I stepped into that complicated and bizarre world." All of this began on the afternoon of the 159th day, when we met by the small lake in school. The girl's words made a certain guy surnamed Su in the corner of the auditorium reveal a somewhat surprised and bewildered expression. "If it weren't for you, I would definitely still be brooding over some small things, right? If it weren't for you, I would definitely still be unhappy because of all the things in my life, right? If it weren't for you standing here, I would definitely be racking my brains just to get first place, right? That encounter might have been a small matter to you, but it changed my life in the truest sense. If the me standing here now can open my heart and smile, it must be because of you." No matter how one listened to the content, it did not sound like a canvas for votes. Some of the audience below began to stir slightly, but more people were listening to the girl's words seriously. It was not because the girl's words were interesting, but because they were infected by the girl's pure and flawless, but incomparably sincere and passionate emotions. "In these 159 days, I gradually realized that I was attracted to you. I'm just an ordinary person, my strength is very weak, but even so, I still want to help you, I want to stay by your side, I want to continue to be with you. Whether it's an ordinary day or an exciting adventure, I want to be an indispensable part of each other, until I become a part of your daily life. If it's possible." The next moment something strange happened. On the side of the auditorium stage where the stage lighting and sound control room was supposed to be, there was a violent explosion. Thick smoke spewed out from the control room and instantly covered the people on the stage. At the same time, the originally bright stage lights suddenly dimmed, and the entire auditorium instantly fell into chaos because of the dim environment. "Oh no!" Song Yu quickly dodged. The first person to recover from the shock was Qin Xingyan, who was also on the stage. However, like the other contestants, she was at the back of the stage. If she did not use her flying sword, it would take some time for her to run to the front. Not to mention she was wearing a pair of small leather boots that were not convenient for running. Due to the vibration caused by the explosion, the stage lights hanging above were on the verge of falling. No, rather than saying that they were on the verge of falling, it was more accurate to say that they had already begun to fall. However, there were still a few broken wires that were connected to the stage lights, preventing them from falling completely. Song Yu, on the other hand, was still in a daze because of the explosion in the control room on the other side. She did not notice the situation above her head. However, the moment Qin Xingyan ran onto the stage, she suddenly realized the reason why Song Yu hadn't noticed the stage lights that were creaking and about to fall at any moment due to the power lines snapping. After the explosion, something flew out from the control room. The first thing that came into view were two girls. Qin Xingyan did not know the two girls, but one of them was wearing a robe made of many talismans, which made her look like a onmyoji. She also carried a small backpack on her back. The other girl was holding a strange-looking spear in her hand. For some reason, the atmosphere she gave off was somewhat similar to Chihaya Fukuyama. At this time, the two girls had already fainted. The robe made of talismans on the onmyoji girl's body had also begun to disintegrate and disappear, revealing the girl's somewhat tattered casual clothes underneath. However, this was not the most important thing. There was something that shocked Qin Xingyan even more. Originally, there was only a glass window between the control room and the stage, but now that the glass window had shattered due to the explosion, a black, sticky, and heavy substance that looked like mud slowly flowed out of the window and gradually formed a humanoid monster. From the glass shards that still remained on the window, she could vaguely see a big hole in the wall behind the control room. It seemed that this thing did not stay in the control room from the beginning, but had just broken through the wall and entered the room. The humanoid monster made of black mud gave Qin Xingyan a very strange feeling. It was not a feeling of terror. Although its appearance was indeed somewhat frightening, Qin Xingyan could sense a heavy and deep sadness and despair from it that made it difficult for her to breathe. This kind of sadness and despair would spread and affect the people around it, making them empathize with it. The strong sadness would make people have the urge to howl and cry, and they would collapse to the ground powerlessly. The serious feeling of despair would be a blow to the heart, and it might even trigger the human body's protective mechanism and cause them to go into shock. However, once they woke up, the unparalleled feeling of despair would make them want to commit suicide. When normal people encountered this kind of monster, they would definitely feel fear and focus their attention on it. Therefore, they would probably pass out without noticing their own situation. Only people who had a certain degree of strength or who had a strong will could confront it with a clear mind. What kind of monster was it that could make people feel such deep sorrow and despair? Qin Xingyan couldn't care less that she was in public. She summoned her two flying swords, hoping that the audience below would be blocked by the smoke screen and the dim environment and wouldn't be able to see what was happening. But before she could do anything, her hand was pressed down by someone. Senior. Qin Xingyan, who was so scared that he almost swung his sword back, turned his head, only to find that it was Su Shenxing who had appeared beside them without them knowing. He could not help but shout in surprise. This kind of thing, I have seen something similar before. Su Shenxing nodded and then looked at Song Yu, who was also unaffected because of the protection of the sea serpent's pearl. He turned his head away awkwardly and Song Yu also lowered her head with a red face. Something similar? Fortunately, Qin Xingyan immediately continued the topic. In order to protect his homeland, a warrior who spent half his life on the battlefield witnessed his lover die in the war. When he finally returned home, he found that his family and friends had died because of the king's tyranny. He, who had made great contributions, was also accused of a groundless crime because the king was afraid of him, and he became a traitor to the kingdom. When he was spurned by everyone, he had no choice but to borrow the power of the demon. But it was not to avenge himself, but to resurrect his lover. In the end, because he could not control the power of the demon, he was devoured and turned into a piece of meat with an endless desire to eat. It's similar to the thing in front of us now. Su Shenxing said slowly. This is really too. Song Yu looked surprised. Even Qin Xingyan could not help but frown. Senior, what happened to that person in the end? Dead. Su Shenxing was expressionless. I killed him. What? He was one of my first comrades. But at that time I did not have the power to save him. In order to fulfill his last wish, in order to let him retain his last dignity, I killed him when he was about to destroy his former home. Su Shenxing said lightly without any sadness or joy in his voice. What about the king? Qin Xingyan continued to frown and asked. He's also dead. Su Shenxing did not pause in the slightest as he replied, don't we all have to eat our last meal before we die? I let them eat what they wanted to eat the most, whether it was the king or my comrades. Su Shenxing's face finally showed some expression, which was probably a mocking smile. Qin Xingyan guessed inwardly. No one knew whether it had sensed that Su Shenxing was not easy to deal with or it was just slow, but when Su Shenxing was talking to the girls, the black monster did not attack. He just hovered there, making disgusting gurgling sounds like the swamps in anime. What should we do next? Understanding the hidden meaning in Su Shenxing's words, the girl did not continue to ask. Instead, she wisely asked how to deal with the monster in front of them. Just leave it to me. Su Shenxing walked forward quickly. The humanoid monster made of black mud seemed to have sensed danger, and suddenly flashed back at an extremely fast speed, which startled Qin Xingyan. The monster's current speed was completely different from what it had shown just now. If the monster's slow movement was taken as its slow movement, it would be enough to make ordinary cultivators suffer a great loss if it suddenly attacked. Of course, that was for ordinary cultivators. When Su Shenxing approached, the monster would not even think about running away, let alone launching a sneak attack. However, that kind of speed was nothing for Su Shenxing, who was good at high-speed trains for ordinary people. Almost in the blink of an eye, Su Shenxing appeared on the monster's escape route. Anyway, his fist was protected by cloud scales, so he did not care whether the black mud would harm him or not, and directly punched it. Interestingly, it was almost useless to use other things to attack the black mud. When Yuan Hanakeyuan was fighting with the monster, she summoned a huge beast claw with mud to launch a powerful physical attack on the black mud. However, except for shattering the black mud, it did not cause any substantial damage, even though Yuan Hanakeyuan took the opportunity to seal away a lot of the black mud with the yin-yang technique. However, not only did Su Shenxing's fist not shatter the black mud or sink into it, but it turned the black mud into a sandbag and was beaten up by him without any strength to fight back. That's enough. Although he had never said it, in fact Su Shenxing had done a lot of things in his past that he regretted. The matter of his comrade that Qin Xingyan and the others just now was one of them. At that time, because he wanted to return to Earth, he was looking for the Holy Sword all over the world, so he did not notice what happened to his comrade after he returned to his hometown. By the time he found out, it was too late. And the Holy Sword he had at that time was simply the flashing Holy Sword Halakti that could accelerate infinitely within the limits of his body's endurance. Unable to change all this, he could only kill his comrade who did not die in the war with his own hands. However, his comrade did not resent him at all. The moment before he died, he regained his consciousness and only felt grateful to Su Shenxing. It should be known that his comrade was Su Shenxing's first comrade in the truest sense. At that time, Su Shenxing was just an earthling with the title of brave. Except for the so-called strength of brave, he had no combat skills. Almost all of his combat skills were learned from these earliest comrades in arms. They were simple and practical without any fancy tricks. At the same time, this simple and practical combat thinking also influenced Su Shenxing for a long time, and it had not changed until now. At that time, all of his comrades in arms and Su Shenxing had a relationship that was like a teacher and a friend. Although compared to the later ones who were the princes and princesses of a country, the kings who carried the future of a certain race, the legendary dragons, the candidates for gods, the witches who were cursed by thousands of creatures, the last hope in the land of doomsday, the only rebel in the world conquered by the demon king's army, and so on, these simple military identities were really nothing. But no matter who it was, they all had a place in Su Shenxing's memory. Therefore, Su Shenxing had always regretted not being able to save the other party back then. If the monster that appeared in front of him this time was just an ordinary monster, he would be able to finish it off with a punch. But since it was a monster that could evoke his memories, he did not mind using a slightly more troublesome method to give himself false comfort. After the other party was weakened to a certain extent by the cloud scale, Su Shenxing removed the cloud scale on his hand, then raised one of his palms into a knife hand shape and ruthlessly stabbed into the monster's chest. Suddenly, the monster's body was like an inflated balloon. Every part of its body swelled up as if its whole body was covered with sarcomas. Black and stinky mucus spewed out from the wound where Su Shenxing had stabbed, but none of it fell on Su Shenxing's body. It was all bounced off by the cloud scale covering his body. The cloud scale's frequent movements also meant that Su Shenxing was a little more serious. After a short while, accompanied by a disgusting, sticky sound, Su Xinxing finally pulled his hand out of the monster's body. Then he lightly pushed his palm towards the monster's head, or rather where its head should be. The swelling skin on the monster's body all burst like a punctured balloon and disappeared into the air. In an instant the 3-meter-tall monster disappeared just like that. And in the monster's place, what appeared in front of Qin Xingyan and the others was a naked girl wearing only a pointy wizard hat. Her eyes were tightly shut and her breath was weak as she fell to the ground. This is... Qin Xingyan could not help but ask curiously. The monster's body is wrapped in some kind of uncontrollable power. Su Xinxing glanced at the girl, then quickly looked away under the gaze of the other two people. He then explained seriously, as for whether she can wake up or not, it's up to her. This was a happy place. Although Yuezhing Ningning did not know why she felt happy. But if she could always be with Ling and the others, then no matter what happened it did not matter. Time did not matter. The dark space around them did not matter. The holy ring did not matter. The tribulations and disasters did not matter. As long as she could always live with the people she cared about, with the people who cared about her, it would be good enough. Partner, you really like to act like a spoiled child. A person next to her who could not be seen clearly said. Hey, I've always been working hard. Yuezhing Ningning naturally opened her mouth to defend herself. Sereno, don't you know best? Yes, you've been working very hard, my partner. We have to always be together, Sereno. Ha, of course, you're my dearest partner. Although it was a little strange, it did not matter. It would be good as long as this happy world could continue. That was what she originally thought. But suddenly, the surrounding space lit up, and the darkness was dispelled, leaving Yuezhing Ningning alone in the silence and coldness. What's going on? Ling. Sereno. Where are you? Ningning. A gentle voice called her name. Yuezhing Ningning turned around and saw the girl standing in the distance. Ling. She ran towards the other party in surprise, but was stopped by the other party. Ningning, stop, this is not a place you should be. Ling looked at her from afar. It was different from the previous dark space where she could not see the face clearly. This time, Ningning could clearly see her best friend's expression. There was a helpless and bitter smile on the other party's face and a trace of anxiety. Ling, I miss you so much. Ningning felt wronged. But we're already dead. Ling replied softly. It's okay, we have the holy ring as long as we have the holy ring. Ningning was halfway through her sentence when she felt a splitting pain in her head. She could only hold her head and squat on the ground as she wailed. Then, everything that happened in the real world, the facts that she had forgotten, came back to her. The holy ring is gone. Sereno is also dead. Her face seemed to have lost all color. Why did I? But you're still alive in that world. Ling said seriously, we haven't completely lost hope, you are our hope. The future of our world still has you. But, Yuezhing Ningning's nose turned sour and she could not help but tear up. Partner, you really like to act coquettishly. At this time that familiar, slightly frivolous voice sounded. Sereno? Where are you? Yuezhing Ningning looked up in shock. But no matter how hard she looked, she could not find the sorcerer's hat. Magic devices don't die, I'm just in a deep sleep. Maybe one day we'll meet again. Sereno's voice sounded again. Didn't we say that we'll always be together? Yes, I'll always protect you, as a magic device. Big liar. Yuezhing Ningning finally could not hold it in anymore and cried. Partner, everything hasn't reached the point of no return. Sereno said softly, as long as you still have hope. Wait, Sereno? Ling. Where are you going? Yuezhing Ningning looked at Ling, who was gradually disappearing, and could not help but panic. There's always a time when you wake up from your dreams. Ling smiled. Be strong, I hope that one day I can see you smiling as you welcome Sereno and me back. Yuezhing Ningning gritted her teeth, wiped her face carelessly, and tried to show a smile that was uglier than crying. I'll definitely bring you back to life. She sniffed. Even if I have to bet everything that I have as a magical girl, I'll bring back the daily life that I lost to you. That's right, that's the spirit. That's my dearest partner, Ningning. No matter what, don't forget that the power of a magical girl is the power of the heart, and our hearts will always be with you. The next moment the white light faded and the girl slowly opened her eyes. In the end, the school used the accident as an excuse to cover up the incident in the auditorium. However, Su Xinxing heard the teachers chatting in the office. It seemed like the investor who sponsored the school's anniversary celebration was also there. He did not know how bad of an impression the accident would have on the investor. The only thing that was worth celebrating was that only a few tourists were lightly injured in the accident, and no one was seriously injured or killed. Otherwise, the school's leaders would probably have to commit suicide to appease the world. However, since this kind of accident happened, the beauty pageant was naturally left unsettled. The prize money that was originally prepared would be used to repair the control room that was bombed. As for the girl in the black mud monster, after she woke up and said a few words, she fainted again. It seemed that the black mud had absorbed too much of her strength and spirit, and she should be fine after some rest. Just in case, Su Xinxing still let the two followers of the Chang Shaoxian, the moon goddess Artemis and Hecate, send the girl to a designated room in Sakura apartment. By the way, that room was previously used to hold a certain Miss Cancer of the world who came from another world. As for why Su Xinxing didn't let Moon Rabbit, who had already woken up, do this, it was purely because ever since Su Xinxing met this fellow, she hadn't done anything successful. This made Su Xinxing very suspicious of her ability. Although the latter was extremely indignant about this, she couldn't refute Su Xinxing's words because it was the truth. In the end, she could only run to the maid cafe to help. Because that room was specially set up by Su Xinxing, and there were ghosts guarding there, he was not afraid that the girl would escape and cause trouble in Sakura apartment. As for the identity of the girl, he could wait until after the school anniversary celebration of Jiangjin University was over to ask. After all the work was done, it was Su Xinxing's turn to deal with his own business. That's right, it was about him being confessed to by Song Yu. In fact, although it was a bit narcissistic to say this, Su Xinxing did know a long time ago that Song Yu did have some feelings for him that were beyond friendship. It was not that Su Xinxing liked the feeling of having an ambiguous relationship with girls. It was just that he had a hard time dealing with this kind of interpersonal relationship. Other than pretending that he did not know anything, he really did not know what to do. He thought that there was still a long time before the showdown, but he did not expect Song Yu to be so proactive. However, Su Xinxing was not the kind of person who would pretend that he did not hear anything, so after the incident in the auditorium was resolved, he and Song Yu went to the rooftop. It was almost evening, and from here they could see that someone was moving wood on the playground in the distance, seemingly building something. Su Xinxing knew that it was a reserved event for every school anniversary celebration, the bonfire party. When the bonfire party was held, it meant that the school anniversary celebration had officially come to an end. The sun was slowly sinking below the horizon, and the gorgeous sunset covered most of the western sky. There were only a few sparse stars in the eastern sky, making people feel quite lonely. "You haven't finished speaking yet, right?" After a moment of silence, Su Xinxing spoke first. Although Su Xinxing usually liked to jest and make some harmless jokes, since the other party confessed to him, he must listen to the other party's words carefully and then answer seriously. This was a manifestation of Su Xinxing's moral misophobia, and also the most basic respect for the other party and himself. Song Yu nodded. She bit her lower lip, then raised her head and stared into Su Xinxing's eyes. She gathered her courage and said, "Classmate Su Xinxing, I like you. I know as an ordinary person maybe it's just wishful thinking, but even so I want you to know I like you." She took a breath, her rosy lips licked, and then said, "Every time I see you my heart feels like it's broken. At first I thought it was just an illusion, but as I get along with you, everything about you is so attractive. When I see your smile I know I like you. I can't escape, I may not be able to escape from this feeling for the rest of my life. I like you, please go out with me." Su Xinxing was silent. In the courtyard below, the sound of the students hawking their wares and the laughter of the tourists could be heard. This was the last stage of the school's anniversary celebration, and if they wanted to make a profit, this was their last chance. Therefore, the students who coveted that one credit put in all their effort. In Qin Xingyan's class, the girl put her glasses back on and absent-mindedly commanded the flying sword to continue scaring people. She had no idea that her actions had become a very popular ghost story site among the tourists. She just held her chin and looked at the sky outside the window. No one knew what she was thinking. In the cosplay cafe, the members of the Chang Shaoxian fan club sat in their seats and drank cup after cup of coffee. The empty coffee cups even filled the entire table. The Chang Shaoxian, who had returned to work, used the usual business smile to entertain them, and there was not a trace of impatience on her face. Occasionally when she was free she would listen to the students in the class talk about what happened in the beauty pageant. This made the students who were asked by her quite surprised. After all, she was not at all interested in a beauty pageant that she did not participate in. Su Shinxing's class was well organized under the management of Asahi Sakurakanji, the official maid, although most of the time she was a witch. However, Chiketsuyu was tired from work, so he was lying on the small table beside him, snoring loudly. After confirming with Asahi Sakurakanji that Su Shinxing was not there, Chihaya Fukuyama brought Mizuki Takemiya to the class to contribute to the consumption. As bodyguards and assistants, Hua Kaiyuan and Wu Yijin naturally arrived as well. However, the two of them looked a lot worse. Hua Kaiyuan's head was wrapped in a bandage and he looked very innocent. Wu Yijin only had a few bandages on her face. It was just that her grimacing appearance when she walked made people feel that it was a little funny. In the sky, white snowflakes slowly drifted down. The students in the courtyard made noises, some were surprised, some were happy and some sighed. This business can't be done. But almost everyone's eyes were attracted by the white snowflakes at this moment. Sorry. Su Shinxing also spoke at this time. I can't accept your kindness. I see. Song Yu showed a regretful smile. Actually, I guessed it long ago. Although she was smiling, tears flowed down uncontrollably. I actually knew it long ago. Her tears flowed down and no matter how she wiped them they couldn't be wiped clean. Confessions will never succeed. I knew it long ago. But even so I still want to try. She tried to maintain that smile which was sad but beautiful, because I'm a fool. You must feel very troubled, right? Being confessed like this by me. No, I'm very happy. Su Shinxing didn't keep silent, but said honestly, it's my blessing to be liked by such a beautiful girl like you. But sorry, I also have some reasons on my side. Wu. If you say so, I can't give up. Song Yu wiped her tears and sniffed. This kind of failure can't defeat me. I won't give up so easily. You can consider yourself unlucky to be entangled by a woman like me. Hearing this, Su Shinxing showed a bitter smile. But at the same time, Su Shinxing had to admit that Song Yu might be one of the strongest girls he had ever met. At this moment, the rooftop door fell to the ground with a creak, followed by a blonde little girl who was hugging her knees. She was caught off guard by the sudden collapse of the opposite door and rolled out of the rooftop. Moamoli? Song Yu, who had finally wiped her tears, couldn't help but show an awkward expression. Who would have thought that this little girl was eavesdropping? Wait, before this, what was with this feeling of being caught in the act by the main wife? Emily, what are you doing? Su Shinxing helplessly facepalmed. Previously he had asked Jasmine to treat Cinnabar Cordifolia and Hanakeyuan Yuan. However, instead of returning with Qin Xingyan and the others, Cinnabar Cordifolia had snuck over to eavesdrop on them. And because of this she had even deliberately cut off their spiritual link. The little girl slowly stood up, grabbed the door and pressed it back. I'm here to fix the door. Who are you kidding? Su Shinxing couldn't help but complain. Landlord, the bonfire party is about to start. Emily ignored Su Shinxing's complaints. Then let's go to the bonfire party. Su Shinxing was stunned, then laughed, turned around and reached out his hand to Song Yu, who was still standing there in a daze. Then the girl also smiled at him and held his hand. When they were told that the bonfire party had to be stopped because of the snow, it was already after the three of them ran through the snow to the field. Chapter 331. After Jiangjin University's anniversary celebration came to an end, the school once again regained its tranquility. The students of Jiangjin University had a unique sense of emptiness and loss at the end of such a large-scale event. Some of them were cleaning up the stalls of their classes, some were throwing the trash to designated locations, and some were preparing to go home. Due to going to the beauty contest during his shift, Su Shinxing, who was originally in charge of the work group, was reduced to cleaning up the class. However, in a sense this was a self-inflicted wound, so Su Shinxing had no complaints. It was worth mentioning that when Su Shinxing was cleaning up the class, Emoli and Chiketsu also came over to help. This naturally made the other male compatriots who were originally gloating and complacent shout, "We're not jealous. Let's explode. The 2D world is where we belong. Damn it, why does my heart hurt so much?" And so on, and run away with tears in their eyes. What happened to those guys? After seeing off Mizuki Takemiya and returning here, Chihaya Fukuyama brushed past those people, and couldn't help but ask Su Shenxing curiously. Nothing, probably just thinking about where they came from, where they're going, and what the meaning of their lives is. Su Shenxing casually replied. Hey, what a heavy topic. By the way, where did you go just now? Su Shenxing asked without raising his head while sweeping the floor. I went to send your daughter to rest. Chihaya Fukuyama showed a somewhat naughty smile, and said meaningfully with a smile. Su Shenxing seemed to have a reaction to the word daughter, and subconsciously raised his head with a surprised expression, but then he realized that the other party was only talking about the girl he met in Japan and not his real daughter. Although I don't know what you're planning to do, judging from the fact that you haven't left any memories of her, you don't want to meet her yet, do you? Although he was curious about Su Shenxing's reaction, Chihaya Fukuyama, as the person who was most estranged from Su Shenxing in the Sakura apartment, he did not delve into this point. Yes, well done. Su Shenxing nodded. From the bottom of his heart he felt that Chihaya Fukuyama, who was born in a mortal family, might be the most knowledgeable person in the entire Sakura apartment, even if she had become a god. Compared to having an inexplicable relationship with ordinary people, it was better to cut off all ties with them. After experiencing so many things, Su Shenxing vaguely understood that he might have the most powerful power in the world, but this kind of power was not equal to omnipotence. Even the so-called omnipotent god might not be able to create a stone that he could not lift, right? Similarly, even if he had the destructive power of shattering stars, this did not mean that he had the ability to protect ordinary people from enemies who were not particularly strong. In fact, if he thought about it carefully, in the current situation where there seemed to be some existence targeting him, getting involved with him might be more dangerous. But she will stay in Jiangjin for 2 more days. If you want to avoid her sight, you'd better be careful. Chihaya Fukuyama shrugged non-committally at Su Shenxing's affirmation, then told him the information he had gathered. Oh, is that so? I understand. Thank you for informing me. Su Shenxing immediately thanked the other party. It's okay. After all, I've been eating and living in the Sakura apartment for a few days for free. Just treat it as the accommodation fee. The girl looked very cheerful. If it's possible, I still hope that the accommodation fee can be paid in RMB. Haha, with our relationship, isn't it too tacky to talk about money? I don't think that's something that should be said by the one paying. Although he verbally talked nonsense with Su Shenxing, Chihaya Fukuyama quickly joined Su Shenxing's cleaning army. After a while, Qin Xingyan and Song Yu, who had finished their work in class, also rushed over. The residents of the Sakura apartment, including Song Yu, gathered here to clean up the final battlefield. Originally, if Su Shenxing were to clean the huge classroom alone, it would have taken him at least an hour to clean it up. However, he finished the task in just 10 minutes. Looking around at the people in the classroom, Su Shenxing finally smiled and waved his hand. Let's go home. After returning home, because Song Yu and Asahi Sakurakanji were 2 good cooks, Su Shenxing was naturally liberated. It just so happened that there was still a criminal at home that needed to be interrogated. Thus, Su Shenxing took an apple from the fruit platter, thought for a bit, then gritted his teeth and poured a cup of pure milk that was not much left in the fridge. Only then did he put them on a tray and bring them up to the 2nd floor. The room that the criminal was in was on the 2nd floor. When Qin Xingyan saw Su Shenxing rescue the girl from the black mud on stage, he didn't remember anything. But after the girl calmed down, he suddenly realized that the girl who was completely naked and only had a witch's hat on her head was exactly the same as the hat on the head of the escaped kitten. Although normal people might find it a bit unbelievable, ever since he followed Su Shenxing, Qin Xingyan had experienced many unbelievable situations. Thus, even if he saw a kitten turn into a human, he wouldn't find it strange. Or rather, from the point of view of Huaxia's self-cultivators, an animal turning into a human was nothing more than a transformation. It wasn't a big deal. Thus he quickly told Su Shenxing her guess, and after Su Shenxing confirmed the appearance of the hat with Mo Li, he believed Qin Xingyan's words. Now that he understood this point, he could basically decide what he was going to ask next. Su Shenxing pushed open the door, only to find the girl's back facing him. Her clothes were half undone, her round and cute jade shoulders and half of her smooth back were exposed to the air, giving Su Shenxing a feast for the eyes. However, Su Shenxing was someone who could chat and laugh with all kinds of demon kings. In the auction house of the other world, he had even witnessed the situation of spending a huge sum of 9.8 billion just to buy a few dolls. Naturally, he wouldn't panic over such a small matter like the male protagonist of a light novel who didn't have much knowledge. From the shape of the back and the angle, it's probably just AA. Thus he began to analyze very calmly. The girl, who was startled by Su Shenxing's appearance, wrapped herself tightly in her clothes. Her young face, which was not much older than Chiketsu's, showed a confused expression that said, "What is this pervert talking about? Have you calmed down?" Su Shenxing finally managed to stop the girl from subconsciously screaming. He calmly wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. If the girl had really screamed, his reputation would have taken a hit. However, the girl he had just rejected was downstairs. If the girl turned around and saw another girl's body, that would be too embarrassing. "Who are you? Where is this?" The girl's round eyes were filled with vigilance. "My name is Su Shenxing, you can call me the landlord." Su Shenxing walked into the room, put the tray in his hand on the bedside table, and said, "This is Sakura Apartments, my house. Why am I here?" The girl frowned and seemed to be trying to remember something. At the same time she asked, "I remember that before, obviously. Of course I brought you back. At that time your appearance almost caused a big riot." Is that so?" The girl's eyebrows wrinkled more and more. It seemed that she didn't have a deep impression of what had happened before. But to be honest, it really wasn't a good memory. It didn't matter if she forgot it. "Since you asked me 3 questions, then in return I can also ask you 3 questions, right?" While the girl was sorting out her thoughts, Su Shenxing sat on a chair and asked the girl, "First of all, can you tell me your name and identity?" "My name is Yuezhing Ningning." The girl hesitated for a moment, and then said very firmly, "If I say that I am a magical girl, would you believe me?" "I believe you." Su Shenxing nodded. He had even seen aliens, people from the future and people from another world. What was so inconceivable about a magical girl appearing? "You're actually willing to believe me?" The girl didn't seem to expect Su Shenxing to believe her words without hesitation. She couldn't help but show a surprised expression. This kind of conversation is always based on the belief of the other party. "Of course, if you're lying, it's not like I don't have a way to tell," Su Shenxing replied calmly. "Then the second question." He stretched out his fist toward the girl, then opened his palm. A silver ring lay quietly on his palm. "What is this?" "Holy ring." Did it really repair itself?" The girl covered her mouth, her eyes showing disbelief and surprise. At that time, the last hope that Ling mentioned, could it be referring to this? "Don't be happy too early. This thing is now my trophy." Su Shenxing poured a bucket of cold water on the girl. This silver ring was something he had taken out from the black mud monster's nucleus when he had plunged his hand into its body. Judging from the monster's expression, this thing called the Holy Ring should be something important. "Please give it back to me. I'm willing to do anything." The girl suddenly turned over the bed and eagerly leaned towards Su Shenxing, her face full of pleading. "Willing to do anything?" Su Shenxing looked at the girl with a playful expression, then sat upright like a gentleman. "Then tell me your story in detail." Chapter 332. Yuezhing Ningning hesitated for a moment before she recounted everything that had happened to her. Although this experience was indeed very painful for the young girl, it wasn't something shameful. Moreover, the young girl herself was about to be crushed by the continuous blows during this period of time. Finding someone to talk to instead made her feel carefree and unrestrained. Su Shenxing did not interrupt her narration. He just quietly listened to her story. After that, he handed the food and the holy ring to her and motioned for her to eat first. He then left the room and returned to the main hall. After he relayed the information he learned from the girl to the people in Sakura apartment, they all reacted differently. "Magical girl? What's that?" Qin Xingyan had obviously never seen this type of anime before, so she was confused when it came to magical girls. Also, the ability to grant wishes. Although the stories of mortals often mention magical items with such abilities, I'm sorry to say that it's impossible for such a thing to exist. For example, if I wish for 3 wishes or if I wish for the world to return to the prehistoric era, it's almost impossible for it to come true. Are all magical girls so miserable? Shouldn't they transform beautifully and say something like, "I punish you on behalf of the moon," and then defeat the enemy beautifully? Chihaya Fukuyama was much more normal. It was just that he had not experienced the baptism of some heartwarming anime. Therefore he could not accept the fact that so many magical girls had died. "Give me back my childhood fantasy." Recently the death rate of magical girls seems to be quite high. Sakura Kobayashi added, although they occasionally change their outer appearance to that of a hero, it's unavoidable that they're blind, crippled and mute. I feel like I can feel the malice of the world. Mr. Landlord, give that to me. Emily seemed to be very interested in the holy ring. Of course, her suggestion was vehemently rejected by Su Shenxing. Besides, the holy ring was no longer in his hands. Shenxing, what do you plan to do with that child? Song Yu asked. The child she was talking about was obviously the magical girl upstairs. Initially, I was planning to hand her over to the Space Administration to deal with. After all, she's a space-time stowaway. Su Shenxing stroked his chin. He had no self-awareness that he was also a space-time stowaway and a crazy stowaway at that. Originally, Song Yu immediately understood the meaning behind Su Shenxing's words. Yes, I'm interested in the destroyer of the world that the child mentioned. Su Shenxing nodded and admitted this point without any hesitation. Moreover, didn't Shen Shan say that the girl from the Imperial Concubine Palace would stay in Jiangjin for a few days? Rather than trying to avoid her, it would be better to go to another world. Wouldn't that be perfect to avoid her? Since that child named Fei Gong has lost her memory of you, there's no need to avoid her, right? Qin Xingyan complained. However, Su Shenxing laughed dryly and brushed it off perfunctorily. Although that was what he said, if he thought about it carefully, things might not be that simple. Other things aside, the most important thing was, how could they return to Yuezhing Ningning's world? When the holy ring was still functional, they just had to make a wish to the other party. However, the current holy ring was not that powerful. It was simply a container that contained a certain amount of magic. Even Su Shenxing could not help much in this regard. Although he could indeed cut open space before he knew the specific situation of the other side's world, he could only casually cut open space and send them to some inexplicable different world at most. For the same reason, if one had not been to that world, even Jasmine would not be able to locate that place. Is there no other way? Su Shenxing thought hard. I say. Chihaya Fukuyama thought for a moment, then raised his hand and asked, since we can't do anything about it, why don't we ask an expert in this field? Expert? Su Shenxing was stunned, then understood what the other party meant. Indeed, compared to the motley crew of Sakura Apartments, the person who always did this kind of thing must be more familiar with it. So Su Shenxing ran to the shuttle that was disguised as a van parked in the backyard and began to call the original owner of this thing through the communication module installed on it. Oh, is Lux there? After a long time, there was a response from the other side. Oh, I remember you. You're the one who helped me get rid of the 4-element giant whale last time, right? Is there anything you need from me? Thus, Su Shenxing briefly explained the whole matter to him. After all, Lux was from the Space Administration. Naturally, it was their duty to repatriate stowaways. Since they could do that, of course, there was no need to worry that the other party could not find the world of Yuezhing Ningning. After listening to Su Shenxing's description, Lux slowly replied, in fact, this matter itself is not a big problem. I do have a device here that can find the other party's world. Of course, the premise is that the other party's world has a backup in the Space Administration's database. But the problem is that recently the Space Administration itself has some problems. I'm afraid I can't go there for the time being. What's wrong? What happened? Su Shenxing asked curiously. A senior who has been missing for nearly 3,000 years suddenly returned to the Space Administration. Her executive ship recorded more than 30,000 unrecorded worlds, and at the same time she uploaded a lot of information records of abnormal existences. Because of the sudden influx of information, it caused one of the 3 mainframes of the Space Administration to crash. Now the entire Space Administration is in a mess. I estimate that it will take a long time for my registration permit and shuttle permit to be processed. As expected of the UK, that could cause trouble everywhere. Even Su Shenxing admired it from the bottom of his heart. But in this case, could it be that the plan to go to the original world of Yuezhing Ningning can only be temporarily put on hold? Pinardino Baize? Probably seeing Su Shenxing's worries, Qin Xingyan asked. Is it that monster that looks like a goat? Su Shenxing recalled the classic of mountains and seas that he had read before, and then asked with uncertainty. Although I can't deny that it looks like a goat, Baize is not a monster. It is like the Qilin and Swan Ni, a natural mythological beast. Qin Xingyan patiently explained to Su Shenxing, and unlike other mythological beasts, Baizé has the rare power of omniscience. There are many rare beasts in this world and Baizé is one of them. It is said that near Kunlun, there is a Baizé that has lived for thousands of years. In the mythological story, it might be the guy that gave the Yellow Emperor an illustration of ghosts and gods. In short, if there must be a word to describe a creature like Baizé, it would probably be a fraud. According to Qin Xingyan, Baizé's left eye can see the past, and its right eye can stare into the future. As long as its eyes are still there, it can travel through the timeline at will. However, Baizé itself can't affect the timeline. Since ancient times, even including the mythological era, the only recorded action of a Baizé actively affecting the history of the world was when it gave the Yellow Emperor an illustration of ghosts and gods. In addition to being able to move through the timeline at will, Baizé also has the ability to prophesy. It can understand the history and future of an object just by coming into contact with it. It's just that it is not easy to find Baizé. In fact, even how many Baizé there are in this world is a mystery. There were even some more extreme cultivators who believed that there was only one Baizé in the world from the beginning to the end. It was just that it would move through the timeline to give people the illusion that there was more than one Baizé. If they can find that Baizé, they might be able to deduce a way to go to the Yuezhing Ningning world. When Su Xinxing and Mo Li appeared in Kunlun, God Lu Wu, who was eating some fruit, almost choked to death. Cough, cough, cough. Why are you guys here again? He rolled his eyes and muttered unhappily. Lu Wu, do you know where Baizé is? Su Xinxing didn't bother with small talk and directly asked him. I don't know. Lu Wu had just answered stubbornly when he turned around and saw Mo Li excitedly rubbing his hands together. He couldn't help but yell, how would I know where that old fraud is? If he's not at Kunlun Mountain, then he's probably somewhere near Kunlun. After speaking, Lu Wu hesitated for a moment and added, that guy is different from me. Although he's quite weak and might not even be as good as his granddaughter, he's extremely sneaky. If he doesn't want to, almost no one can catch him. Believe it, even you might not be able to catch him. If Baizé could really move through the timeline, Su Xinxing might not be able to catch him. At most, he could only chop him up along with the timeline. In another world, it seems like he really did manage to chop off the timeline. In short, even if Mo Li treated him like a big dog and miserably played with him, Lu Wu could only lie on the ground and pretend to be dead. He had an expression of, what can I do, I'm also in despair. It seems like he really couldn't help Su Xinxing find Baizé. Since that's the case, he could only rely on himself. Thus, Su Xinxing told Mo Li to let God Lu Wu go and wandered aimlessly on the streets of Kunlun with the little girl. It didn't take long for him to find some clues. To be precise, those clues led him to the door. Some creatures that looked like shadows appeared in front of Su Xinxing and used their slender arms to show them the way. After walking around the maze-like roads for a long time, Su Xinxing and the others finally arrived in front of a rather plain-looking wooden house. It was worth mentioning that for some reason, there was a piece of paper on the door that said, Antique Wooden Door, estimated value 1,200. Su Xinxing thought for a while and finally suppressed his desire to kick the door. He gently knocked on the door twice. Chapter 333. The wooden door opened automatically, revealing the pitch-black interior. At first, Su Xinxing thought he would see something like, although it looks like a run-down house from the outside, the inside is as luxurious as a palace. But that was not the case. It was just a run-down house. And it was the kind that leaked air everywhere. The run-down house was about the size of the living room in Sakura's apartment. What surprised Su Xinxing was that there were no fluorescent lights here, only a flickering incandescent lamp on the ceiling providing a warm orange glow. The house was filled with a mess of things. Su Xinxing saw a rusty bronze alchemy furnace, a gorgeous scabbard, leather books written with unknown codes, and other things that gave people a feeling of extraordinary origins. At the same time, there were also things like a blue and white porcelain painting of the three heroes fighting Zhao Yun, a husky bronze head, and Tang Sansai's third fatty Jean, which gave people a feeling of being in an artifact fraud stronghold. After turning around this small mountain of treasures or trash, one could see a short old man with a stooped back in the middle of it. He looked no different from many of the old people in the Celestial Empire. He wore plain cotton clothes, a pair of round black-rimmed glasses, and his trousers were pulled up high. On his feet was a pair of shiny leather shoes that looked as if they were new. Are you Baizé? Su Xinxing confirmed. Although he did not feel anything unusual from the old man in front of him, he felt like he was just an ordinary old man. First of all, Su Xinxing's perceptive ability was only average, so it was normal that he could not sense anything. Second of all, according to the plot of a typical novel, the person he was looking for was definitely the one in front of him. The old man glanced at Su Xinxing, smiled and did not answer. Oh, this old man is quite arrogant. Su Xinxing widened his eyes in surprise. Emily looked at the old man for a few seconds as if he was no longer interested in the old man. He began to fiddle with the things he was interested in. I have something I need your help with. Although he felt that the old man's attitude was a bit strange, Su Xinxing still controlled his temper and tried his best to ask the old man for help. Oh, was this a tacit agreement? Therefore, Su Xinxing started from the beginning and spent more than half an hour explaining his intentions. After a long while, the other party seemed to come back to his senses and asked Su Xinxing with a confused expression. Young man, are you talking to me? Don't stop me, I'm going to hack him to death. Although Su Xinxing did not say a word, the expression on his face seemed to say so. Perhaps he felt Su Xinxing's killing intent. He immediately lay down on the ground and screamed like a pig being slaughtered. Ah ah ah, my old waist. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I haven't King touched you yet. This old man was frightened by your ferocious look and sprained my waist. If you don't compensate this old man with 100,000 yuan, I won't be able to get up. This has nothing to do with me. It doesn't matter. This old man can use my friends who are proficient in illusions to recreate the scene as evidence. That's usually called perjury. Evidence made under China. Are you dissatisfied with our country? Just as Su Xinxing was considering whether to simply vaporize the entire Kunlun to destroy the evidence or perjury, a voice came from behind him. Zhong Kuei, stop playing. Mr. Su is my distinguished guest. Su Xinxing turned his head and found that at some point, a beautiful woman in a blue palace dress was walking towards him with her eyes closed, exuding a threatening air of nobility. Lord Baizhe. The old man immediately jumped up from the ground with a practiced carp flip, and then very respectfully bowed to the other party. Long time no see, Mr. Su. The beautiful woman in the palace dress slowly opened her eyes. Her right eye was blooming with a faint blue glow and her left eye was dark red. The red dot on her forehead was like a third eye full of spiritual brilliance. No, for you at this time this should be the first time we've met. Even if Su Xinxing was not good at perception at this moment, he could feel the powerful and mysterious power from the east from the other party. If he had to say, the woman in front of him was probably the strongest person he had met since returning to Earth. Even Ying, the cancer of the world, could not be compared with her. Of course, this may be because the latter did not dare to use her full strength for fear of destroying the world. But even so, the strength of the beautiful woman in the palace dress was still not to be underestimated. She seemed to have seen through Su Xinxing's inner thoughts. With a graceful and elegant smile on her face, she walked toward him. Then she tripped over a long thing on the ground that looked like a sex rod. Suddenly, the whole atmosphere became awkward. Not good. What should I say at this time? Or should I pretend not to see it? Even with Su Xinxing's experience, he had never encountered such a thing. For a moment he did not know what to do. If it was a familiar friend at this time, it would be over with a little joke. If it was a guy he did not know, it did not matter if he pretended not to see it. If it was a person he hated, he would use ridicule to attack the other party until they lost the courage to live. But only with Baizhe, Su Xinxing did not know what expression to use to face her. It was obviously not right to call her a friend. Even if she looked familiar, after all, he had never seen her before. It was not right to call her a stranger. He had something to ask of her later. It was not right to be too cold. Sure enough, at this time he should laugh. Although he vaguely heard Emily ridiculing on the side, it's the elimination method. Su Xinxing still walked toward the other party with a serious face. Oh, the way you fell is amazing. As expected of Baizhe. Cough. Su Xinxing swore that he saw the guy named Zhong Kuei spit out his false teeth. I've embarrassed myself in front of you. The other party was not angry. Instead, she immediately stood up with Zhong Kuei's help and patted the hem of her palace dress slightly. Although I can peek into the past and foresee the future, many times, I will be negligent about the current situation. Whether it is me or some powerful people, it is the same. Since you have such a remarkable ability, Then I'm sure you know why I'm here, right? Su Shenxing said with a frown. I know why you have such a big prejudice against me. Bai Zhe was not angry at Su Shenxing's rude words. Instead, she continued to say with a smile, in a certain timeline, you once told me that a deceased friend of yours, a fortune teller, once said to you, the future is unpredictable, because even a speck of dust will cause changes in the direction of the future. The so-called prophecy is either divining the future with the greatest possibility, or it can only predict the general direction of the future. Right? A slightly surprised expression appeared on Su Shenxing's face. He hesitated for a moment and then sighed. Well, I take back my previous words and admit that you have some ability. Perhaps in a certain timeline we have met before. In a sense, your friend is right. The future is not certain, but is in the process of being determined. What I see, hear, feel, and everything that happens now will determine the true direction of the future. What I can foresee is only one of the countless directions, and the general direction of the entire future. However, as the future changes, everything I foresee will naturally change. I have seen the future where Qin Sheng and Wu Guang did not revolt. I have glimpsed the future where Gilgamesh took the elixir of immortality. I have witnessed the future where Chu Bawang unified the world. I have scrutinized the future where King Arthur was not betrayed. I have stared at the future where Yu Fei welcomed back the two emperors. I have looked into the future where Attila was not poisoned to death and completely destroyed Europe. I have looked into the future where Chongzhen revived the great Ming dynasty. Even now, the future I see is still changing tens of millions of times per second. Countless knowledge that I once knew that I once didn't know that I once knew 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 that I once knew, and that knowledge that had never appeared before will become part of my accumulation. Although human beings have only developed for a few thousand years, as far as the depth of civilization that I know, even if it is a completely different part, has already been accumulated for more than millions of years. The so-called omniscience of outsiders is actually nothing more than this. The omniscient Bai Zhe told Su Shenxing everything about himself as if he did not know that they were close friends. Su Shenxing, who did not expect that the other party would say this to him, awkwardly scratched his face. I think, he muttered in a low voice, not knowing what to do. This doesn't seem to have anything to do with me. Perhaps it is. Just think of it as an old woman who can't help but nag at you because she has lived for too long. Bai Zhe smiled slightly. It is precisely because I have inherited the history of human beings that I am so attached to these creatures that are incomparably insignificant in the eyes of the gods. What exactly do you want to say? Su Shenxing did not quite understand her words. He felt that he seemed to have understood something, but when he thought about it carefully he could not tell what it was. I only hope that if one day you can be freed from that oath, please do not hate this world that you once protected. That is all. After saying this, the beautiful woman turned around and pointed at the pile of messy things. The thing you want is in there. It is called the Kunlun mirror. It is a relic left behind by an old friend of mine. While calling it a relic is a bit wrong. Because if I want, I can still go back to the time when I chatted and drank with her. In short, with that treasure and the silver ring that the girl brought from another world, you can go to the world you want to go to. Su Shenxing looked in the direction that the woman was pointing at. Sure enough, he vaguely saw an object that looked like a bronze mirror in the pile of trash. He turned around and wanted to say something to the other party, but he found that Bai Zhe had disappeared. And the pile of trash that seemed to be worth a lot of money had also disappeared. Only a few worthless knockoffs were left. By the way, the massage stick was still there. So stingy, Su Shenxing muttered softly and pointed at the pile of trash. Emily, go. Thus, the little girl rushed over like a Labrador that had received an order. Not long after, she dug out a terracotta army figurine. No, 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 we don't want this, right? The landlord is so annoying. Go find it yourself, Emily said with a look of disdain. It was not that Su Shenxing was lazy, but as a normal man he really did not want to run into a pile of trash that hid a massage stick. This made him regret that he only brought one Emily this time. In short, because of various reasons, in the end he still went up and found the Kunlun mirror himself. During this process, Su Shenxing knew two things. First, in the pile of trash there was also a jiaotong. Please don't ask Su Shenxing how he knew this. Second, the sign of the jiaotong seemed to be called Mr. Jiaotong. Please don't ask Su Shenxing how he knew this. Chapter 334. After knowing what had happened, Su Xinxing and the others did not restrict Yuezhing Ningning's freedom. Asahi Sakurakanji, who was kinder by nature, would even do something to cheer her up when he saw her grieving over the death of a friend. For example, he would invite her to go shopping, make some delicious food for Yuezhing Ningning to try, and take out his prized collection of BL books for her to admire. That last one was probably because Sakurakanji wanted to spread her faith and develop a similar interest, right? Asked a female cultivator who did not want to reveal her name. Regardless of the reason, Asahi Sakurakanji's actions still left a good impression on Yuezhing Ningning, and made her feel a little better. That was until she noticed some white spots starting to appear on her hands. It was not a skin disease, nor was it an aftereffect of the holy ring going berserk. It was a feeling similar to being petrified. Then the girl suddenly realized that when she came to this world, her body seemed to have been destroyed. The reason why she turned into a cat was because the amount of remains collected by the wizard Hatsureno was only enough to make a cat. Although the holy ring had gone berserk and allowed her to have a body for a short period of time, it was only an illusion. It was not a real body. If this continued, this body would disappear sooner or later due to the exhaustion of mana from the holy ring. Moreover, although there seemed to be a ridiculously strong person in this world, there was not much mana in the air, which greatly increased the mana needed to maintain this body. About 24 hours left. It was not difficult to solve this problem. As long as she absorbed the remaining mana in the holy ring, even if it was in an incomplete state, she should be able to maintain it for a year or two. But at the same time, because the current state of the holy ring was very unstable, once he absorbed mana from it, it was very likely that all the mana in the holy ring would directly flow into his body. The consequence of this was that the holy ring that had lost all its mana would shatter. Without any hesitation, the girl placed the holy ring back on the table. She had no intention of using it. If the landlord named Su Xinxing could not find a way to transmigrate back to his original world, then it would be a different story. After all, as Ling had said, he was their last hope for resurrection, and he had to survive no matter the cost. However, if the landlord really did find a way to transmigrate, he would most likely have to use the holy bracelet. Furthermore, resurrecting Ling and the rest would require the holy bracelet, so even if there was a chance, Yuezhing Ningning would not use the holy bracelet. The noise coming from the living room downstairs only happened when Mr. Landlord appeared. Most of the time, this place called Sakura apartment was relatively quiet. It seemed that he had returned. Yuezhing Ningning pulled at his sleeve, trying to cover the white spots on the back of his hand. Then he opened the door and walked down the stairs. You came at the right time. As expected, Su Xinxing, who had come back, greeted Yuezhing Ningning, who was walking down the stairs. Take out the silver ring. I may have found a way to go to your world. He took out the Kunlun mirror and the holy bracelet and placed them together. Then everyone gathered around and waited for a few seconds. But nothing happened. Su Xinxing almost flipped the coffee table. Could it be that Master Bai Zhe also made a mistake? Qin Xingyan was also puzzled. However, Emoli tilted his head and thought for a while before coming up with an answer. Mr. Landlord is not affected by magic. Speaking of which, it was true. Not to mention the layer of cloud scales on Su Xinxing's body, even Su Xinxing himself was immune to almost all magic. Moreover, this immunity did not differentiate between friend and foe. Even if an ally wanted to give him a shield, they might not be able to do so. Currently, the only person who could affect Su Xinxing was Su Xinxing's friend in the other world and Mo Li. Moreover, Mo Li's magic would only work if Su Xinxing accepted it. Now the situation seemed to be a little troublesome. After all, the effect of the Kunlun mirror was not to open a hole in the world to another world, but to teleport something from this world to another world. Su Xinxing could take the initiative to walk through the former. The last time he fell into the Lattice World's portal was of this type, but he could only be confused about the latter. In short, as long as Su Xinxing was in the selected target, the Kunlun mirror would display a 404 selected target is invalid expression and stop the transfer. Since Mo Li's magic can affect Senior, why don't we go to the other world first, and then let Mo Li use magic to pull Senior over? Qin Xingyan suggested after thinking hard for a while. Emoli made a cross with his hands in front of his flat chest and said, "Can't do it." Then with Su Xinxing's translation, everyone understood what Emoli meant. Indeed, Emoli's teleportation could indeed cross worlds. Even in this state, Emily could teleport an entire planet to another world if he was serious. However, if he tried to teleport across worlds, due to the interference of the world barrier, Emily's teleportation was no different from ordinary teleportation magic. There was no way to teleport Su Xinxing to a fixed point. Otherwise, in order to determine Su Xinxing's location in the lattice world, she did not need to go to the Cladric Sea with Qin Xingyan. She could have just teleported Su Xinxing back. If that's the case, does Emily want to learn how to refine magic treasures? Due to their different professions, Qin Xingyan listened to Su Xinxing's nonsense for a while, and then asked Emily, if you can refine the Kunlun mirror, the magic of the Kunlun mirror can be considered as Emily's own magic, right? This is worth a try. Su Xinxing touched his chin and felt that Qin Xingyan's suggestion was worth a try. However, just as Qin Xingyan was about to teach Emily the basics of refining magic treasures, Emily suddenly pointed at the door. A flying saucer. Everyone subconsciously looked at the door, but they did not see anything. When they turned back, they saw that Emily's cheeks were bulging as if his mouth was stuffed with something. The Kunlun mirror on the table had disappeared. Wait, Emily. The cultivator girl was stunned. Emily, Su Xinxing's face was serious. How did you swallow such a big mirror? That's not the main problem. Emily, you can't eat anything you want. That bronze mirror is already an antique. From the perspective of food, it should have expired, Song Yu said. So that's not the main problem. Before Qin Xingyan could say anything to Emily, the little girl swallowed the thing in her mouth with a gulp. Chapter 335. In the center of Lushao City, there should have been a bustling city center, but now there was only a huge hole left. The area of the hole was so big that at least 1/5 of the entire city had been gouged out. At the same time, the lives of nearly 100,000 people had disappeared along with the hole. Ordinary people would never be able to know what had happened in the end. The only one who knew the inside story was a little girl. A few months ago, Mei Weiner was just an ordinary junior high school student. She was adopted when she was young and did not know who her biological parents were. She only knew that in her swaddling clothes, there was an ancestral necklace that was said to be left behind by her biological parents. It had to be said that Mei Weiner's adoptive parents were good people. They did not take the necklace for themselves. Instead, when Mei Weiner grew up, they told her everything and gave the necklace to her. Then, because of some coincidences, Mei Weiner inexplicably became a magical girl because of the necklace and was involved in a battle. It was said that as long as one defeated the nightmare, one could obtain a magical item called the Holy Ring, which could fulfill one's wish. If that's the case, even if it's just once, Mei Weiner hoped in her heart. If I can see my biological parents, how good would that be? It was not that she was dissatisfied with her adoptive parents. She simply wanted to see the people who had given birth to her. To be honest, Mei Weiner did not know what she thought of her biological parents. If they did not care about her at all, then why did they leave the necklace to her? But if they loved her, then why did they give her to someone else to raise? It was probably this curiosity that allowed her to survive the battle. However, as the battle escalated, the enemies became stronger and stronger, and Mei Weiner was somewhat powerless. When the magical girl team fell apart and was reunited under the efforts of that senior, what supported Mei Weiner to continue fighting was no longer a simple wish, but a longing for that senior. But it was only a longing because that senior already had someone more suitable than her. Lying on the white bed, Mei Weiner looked out of the window and let out a long sigh. From here she could see the huge hole in the city. She didn't know what happened in the final battle because before she faced the final enemy, she perished together with a monster derived from the 3 calamities. Although she didn't die because of the protection of the necklace, she lost consciousness and fell out of the mirror world. It was said that when she was found at the edge of the big hole, her appearance was very tragic. Her limbs were almost twisted to the extent that they were almost fried. There were fractures all over her body, countless abrasions, contusions and bruises, and there were also symptoms of internal organ damage and internal bleeding. She had lost almost 50% of the blood in her body. It was already a miracle that she could survive. Fortunately, the location of the largest hospital in Lushao City was located in the periphery of the city. Otherwise, if she could not get timely treatment, she would have been doomed. But after only one day, she regained consciousness. Now it was only about a week after the final battle, but her body had recovered from a near-death state to a seriously injured state in the general sense. Even the attending doctor was amazed, saying that he had never seen a patient recover so quickly. May Wainer knew that this was the effect of the magical girl's body. In fact, as long as her magic power was not exhausted, injuries in the general sense would heal very quickly. The reason why her recovery was so slow was simply that she was no longer a magical girl in the pure sense. The last scene she saw before she lost consciousness was the appearance of her necklace, the magical device Morail, collapsing and shattering in order to protect her. After losing the magic device, although she still retained some of the physique of a magical girl, and could even sense and use mana, the amount of perception and control she could use had dropped to the level of a human. She could no longer use magic as easily as she could when she was a magical girl. May Wainer felt that the final result of the final battle should be that the senior and seniorling had perished together with the final enemy. Because until today the world had not been destroyed by the 3 great disasters and the 7 disasters, and the senior and seniorling had not returned. This made May Wainer's heart empty and she did not know what to do. The only thing worth rejoicing over was the fact that his adoptive parents weren't affected by the void and were still alive. "Yo, May Wainer, I'm here to play again." A somewhat familiar voice came from the door of the ward. May Wainer looked at the door and saw a girl with short honey-colored hair leaning against the door. She was wearing the same hospital gown as her, but unlike May Wainer, her hands and feet were not bandaged. Other than being pitifully thin, she did not seem to be ill at all. She was leaning against the door and greeted her with a smile. The girl could be considered as her ward mate. Her name was Zhu Shutong and she lived in the ward next door. It was said that until a week ago she was still in a vegetative state. But not long after the big hole appeared she woke up. Now, other than being a little malnourished, there was nothing wrong with her body. However, to be on the safe side, she did not immediately leave the hospital. She was still in the hospital for observation. May Wainer felt a little bit of magic residue on her body, so she should be an innocent person who was attacked by the nightmares. Because of that, she was mentally injured and fell into a deep sleep. Zhu Shutong and Little Wanner's conversation gradually changed from casual chatter to complaints and venting. "Really, I clearly saw a monster crawl out of the mirror. Why doesn't everyone believe me? The big hole must be the work of that monster," Zhu Shutong said indignantly. Then she hugged Little Wanner's head and said, "Only Little Wanner believes me." Little Wanner, whose face was buried in her chest, could only smile bitterly. The monster that crawled out of the mirror was only a low-level nightmare. The one that created the big hole in the city was the manifestation of the 3 disasters. Because it appeared too suddenly, even the magical girls did not have time to drag it into the barrier. As a result, the entire city center was hollowed out, causing a huge disaster to the city. "Speaking of which, Sister Zhu, did your friend not visit you?" Little Wanner did not want to continue the topic of nightmares, so she could only change the topic. "She was involved in the big hole's accident and passed away." Zhu Shutong's expression suddenly became sad. This made Little Wanner feel surprised and apologetic. However, before Little Wanner could apologize, Zhu Shutong returned to her previous naughty expression and said, "Ah, it's all your fault, Little Wanner. You made me so sad. I want compensation for my mental damage." 9.8 billion. Pay with your body. Because her hands and legs had not recovered, she could only let others do whatever they wanted to her. After playing with Zhu Shutong for a while, Little Wanner could only lie on the bed with her face flushed red and her body covered in sweat. It was clearly just scratching an itch. "Little Wanner, you can become so perverted. This can be considered a talent, right?" Zhu Shutong swallowed her saliva and said with a seductive expression, "Don't you have any shame for doing this to a patient?" Little Wanner's face was full of shame and anger. "It's all Little Wanner's fault. You're actually playing the blame game. It's because you're too sensitive. I'm just ticklish, okay?" Because she stayed a little too long and was complained by other patients that it was too noisy, Zhu Shutong was finally kicked out by the nurse who came to change Little Wanner's bandages. Night fell. Little Wanner was lying on the bed and looking at the night scene outside the window. She did not feel it when she was chatting with Zhu Shutong, but now that she was alone, the feeling of loneliness could not be erased. She did not know whether it was because she was introverted and pessimistic, or because the tragic scene of the battle had left a deep impression on her. Every time this happened, she would secretly feel sad. If she had worked a little harder, if she had been a little stronger, if she had fought a little harder, would the result have been different? Would the other magical girl seniors have been saved like her instead of dying in that cold barrier? It was all thanks to the cheerful Zhu Shutong, who often came to counsel her these few days. Otherwise, just this kind of heavy self-blame would be enough to crush the young girl's delicate heart. After another half a week, little Wanner's hands had almost recovered. Although her legs were still a little weak, she could walk with crutches. However, her adoptive parents felt that it would take 100 days to recover from the injury. Even if she had recovered to this extent, it would be better to stay in the hospital for a period of observation. Even if little Wanner knew that her body was fine, due to the concern of her adoptive parents, she could not willfully say that she wanted to go home. In the end, she could only continue to stay in the hospital and live a boring hospitalized life. 2 weeks and more than 10 days later, the incident of the sinkhole, which was originally stirred up, gradually calmed down under the control of the relevant departments. However, the reconstruction of Luxiao City would be somewhat difficult. After all, how to fill up the bottomless hole was a huge problem. The list of the victims of the accident had basically been announced. As little Wanner expected, the other magical girls were all classified as dead. After all, the big hole had gouged out the entire city center. All the people inside could be said to be in a state where there were no bones left. Missing was basically equivalent to death. Little Wanner, how are you today? On this day, when little Wanner was doing rehabilitation in the hospital courtyard, Zhu Shutong came out of nowhere. She had already been confirmed to be fully recovered and was discharged from the hospital. At this time, her complexion was much better than half a week ago. Although her body still looked a little thin, she looked much more energetic. At this time, she was wearing winter sportswear and carrying a small backpack on her back. She was excitedly waving at little Wanner. Sister Zhu. Little Wanner saw her and smiled slightly. She also greeted her. I feel good. I should be able to leave the hospital in 2 days. I got something good. Do you want to see it together? Zhu Shutong looked around and saw that there was no one nearby. She could not help but show an excited expression. She mysteriously moved closer to little Wanner and took out an iPad from her backpack. She skillfully turned it on. Seeing her like this, little Wanner's little brain immediately ran. Zhu Shutong plus iPad plus good thing equals Aina something. Suddenly, the girl's face became so red that it looked like blood could drip out. At this moment, it was as if a demon and an angel were whispering in her ear. Demon. It's nothing. What's wrong with treating it as a physical health class? Angel. Yes. Demon. And this is what Sister Zhu wants you to see. The main responsibility is on the other side. Just brushing off other people's good intentions is not a good choice in interpersonal relationships. Angel. Yes. Demon. Besides, isn't it normal to be curious about that kind of thing? Curiosity is the driving force for human progress. Angel. Yes. Little Wanner. Angel, what use do I have for you? In short, under half-forced and half-willing circumstances, little Wanner could not hold back her curiosity and looked at the image on the iPad. The video wasn't particularly clear. Compared to a normal movie, it was more like a surveillance video like CCTV. Not CCTV, but the abbreviation for closed-circuit television. Although the specific location could not be seen, it should be a washroom or something like that. Oh, could this be the so-called secret camera? As expected of Sister Zhu. She really knows how to play. Little Wanner thought to herself. After a while, a young woman slowly walked into the room. Then she started to touch up her makeup in front of the mirror by the sink. However, not long after that, as if she had seen a ghost, she was so scared that she fell to the ground. She crawled backward on all fours. However, after a few steps, she seemed to have been bitten by something invisible. A large bite mark appeared on her left calf. No matter how hard the woman struggled, it was to no avail. In the end, after leaving a long trail of blood on the floor of the washroom, she was dragged by the invisible creature onto the sink and into the mirror. This is... Little Wanner's face was filled with shock. The invisible monster in the mirror. It's an urban ghost story that has been trending on ghost story websites recently. At this time, the smile on Zhu Shutong's face disappeared. In its place was a serious expression. According to my investigation, This video was most likely taken a week ago. However, the source of the video has been mysteriously deleted. Not only that, although there is no concrete evidence, but in the past half a week alone, there have been at least 5 cases of attacks on the internet that seem to be more realistic and credible. A week ago, the expression on little Wanner's face became even more strange. The magical girls and the final enemy should have died 2 weeks ago. In other words, it started 2 weeks ago. As the source of all the nightmares, the 7 disasters of the 3 disasters should have been eliminated. Why would there still be attacks like this? Could it be that the reason why the senior magi didn't die together with the final enemy and that everything had been peaceful for the past 2 weeks was because the enemy was heavily injured and was recuperating from his injuries? I was too careless. Because the world was not destroyed, I was too naive to think that the seniors had successfully defeated the enemy. If they had noticed it earlier, perhaps no one would have continued to be harmed. Thinking of this, little Wanner did not continue to listen to Zhu Shatong. Instead, she leaned on her walking stick and walked toward the nearest washroom. Huh. Little Wanner, what's wrong? Zhu Shatong hurriedly put the iPad back into her bag and then quickly followed him. Probably because it was still early, other than little Wanner, there was no one else in the washroom. Therefore, she bumped into the huge mirror in the washroom. But unlike before, she did not go through the mirror and enter the mirror world. Instead, her forehead slammed into the mirror. Suddenly, spiderweb-like cracks appeared on the mirror. Why, little Wanner did not care about the bleeding on her forehead. She just looked at the broken mirror in shock. Her face showed an expression of disbelief. I can't go through. Ah, right, I'm already. It was not until this moment that the girl clearly and intuitively understood that she was no longer a magical girl. Why? She punched the mirror again and again with her fists, but it didn't have any effect other than staining her hands with blood. Oi, although I'm very happy that you believe me instead of questioning whether my brain is damaged, don't suddenly hit your head and fist against the mirror. Zhu Shatong, who had followed them over, quickly stopped the man from harming himself. We need to think about it carefully before we can save him. Sister Zhu? I can't do anything, Mei Wanner quietly sobbed. Obviously, I had to pull myself together. Obviously, I was the only one left. Obviously, the seniors fought for the last chance for me. But Zhu Shatong seemed to realize something. She hugged the crying girl in her arms and did not say anything. Little Wanner's sobbing turned into wailing. In the end, she cried until she was tired and fell asleep. When she woke up again, little Wanner found herself lying on the hospital bed. Her forehead and hands were carefully wrapped with bandages. Zhu Shatong was humming beside the bed. She gave her a small apple. Each piece of apple was cut into the shape of a small rabbit. It was very cute. Sister Zhu, little Wanner, when I was in a vegetative state, I kept having a dream. Noticing that little Wanner had woken up, Zhu Shatong did not stop what she was doing. Instead, she said casually, in order to save me, my best friend turned into an angel and fought with all kinds of monsters in a fairy tale-like place. But not all fairy tale-like endings are happy. In the process, she lost a lot. In order to pursue the last glimmer of hope, she disappeared. Then I woke up. Little Wanner laughed as if she was mocking herself. Compared to her worthless death in the disaster of the Big Void, I'd rather believe the result in my dream. She achieved her wish, but in the end she disappeared. I won't be unhappy for the rest of my life because of this. I'll think that I killed her, but I'll take her share and try to live happily. This is my decision. Sister Zhu, ah? Before little Wanner could say anything, the apple was stuffed into her mouth. Is it delicious? Zhu Shatong asked with a smile. Yes. Little Wanner nodded with tears in her eyes. She said with a nasal voice, it's sweet, that's right. There's no hurdle that can't be overcome. If you really don't have any clues today, eat until you're full and have a good sleep. Maybe you'll find a way tomorrow? Zhu Shatong stuffed another piece of apple into little Wanner's mouth. Hehe. It's a pity that we can't roast sausages in the hospital. Otherwise, little Wanner, you'll look more interesting when you eat it. Sister Zhu. I'm just kidding. Have a good rest. I'll come and see you tomorrow. Okay. This was the new Luxiao City Public Cemetery, located at the foot of a small lake at the eastern suburbs of Luxiao City. Little Wanner, who had completely recovered, walked among the graves in a black dress. Most of the graves in this newly built cemetery were empty. There were no ashes. Most of the graves here were the clothes of the deceased who died in the disaster of the Big Void. This was the so-called cenotaph. After visiting the graves of her several magical girl seniors, little Wan only had one destination left. Senior Ningning. As the youngest member of the magical girl team, little Wan received a lot of care from everyone, especially Ningning. Even during the chaotic times of the magical girl team, Yuezhing Ningning would intentionally or unintentionally protect little Wan. It was because of this that little Wan saw Yuezhing Ningning as a gentle senior. She trusted and looked forward to her. No matter what, she was Ningning's staunchest supporter. After the magical girl team disbanded, when Ningning stood up to gather everyone again, little Wan was one of the first to respond. What should I do? If it was you, Senior Ningning, you'd definitely think of a solution and put it into action, right? If only you were the one who survived and not me. She lowered her head with a miserable expression. Not only Senior Ningning but also Senior Ling and Senior Ya. Why did I have to be the most useless one to survive? Little Wan At this time a surprised voice came from behind her. Little Wan subconsciously wiped her face and then turned around to see a surprised Zhu Shutong standing behind her. She was holding a bouquet of flowers in one hand and a small bucket in the other. It seemed that she was also here to visit the graves. Sister Zhu? Why are you here? Why am I here? Because Ningning is the friend I was talking about. Little Wan, when did you meet Ningning? Is Ningning one of the seniors you were talking about? That's not right. As far as I know, Ningning doesn't seem to have joined any clubs or associations. Zhu Shutong's face was full of suspicion. This. Little Wan, who was more naive by nature, had her eyes round. She didn't know how to explain herself. Forget it. Little Wan, we'll talk about it when you're ready to tell me. Zhu Shutong sighed and put the bucket on the ground. Rather than listening to you stutter and lie, it's better to wait until you're ready to tell me. I'm sorry, Sister Zhu. Little Wan became even more disappointed. If you keep apologizing, your life will become bitter. Zhu Shutong placed the bouquet of flowers next to Yuezhing Ningning's tombstone. Then she reached her right hand toward the bucket, planning to sprinkle the tombstone with water. Coincidentally, I have a new discovery in my research on that ghost story. After I'm done with Ningning's grave, I'll tell you. Once she finished, little Wanner's eyes suddenly sharpened. She suddenly pushed Zhu Shutong to the ground. Ouch, little Wanner. Zhu Shutong was about to complain when she saw a hand reach out from the bucket. It was wrong to call it a hand because it was made from something that looked like black mud. Even though it looked like a human hand at first glance, upon closer inspection, one would realize that it was an amalgamation of countless black fingers. Furthermore, the amalgamation was not a hand but a finger. However, the small black fingers were writhing on the body, making it look like a hand. In the middle of the finger was a mouth, and inside the mouth was a pale white eyeball. The scary scene that could be described with words could not even show 1/10,000th of the actual thing. It was so scary that just looking at it would make one's hair stand on end. Fear would seize one's mind and one would lose the ability to move. Nightmare? No, wait, what is this thing? Even little Wan could not make an accurate judgment. She could only keep her distance from the thing. Sister Zhu, is this the monster that you saw in the mirror? Of course not. As if awakened by little Wanner's voice, Zhu Shutong finally struggled out of her fear. After taking a deep breath, she said angrily, "The monster that I saw in the mirror was much more handsome than this thing." Can a monster be described as handsome? Of course. Compared to a disgusting and rotting corpse, being attacked by a handsome young male vampire is much better, right? Oh, even though there were many things that she wanted to complain about, little Wan could roughly understand what Zhu Shutong meant. Originally, although nightmares were very scary, they still had a basic appearance. If they were not monsters, they would be similar to demons in myths and legends. However, this thing that came out of the bucket had reached an indescribable level that made one's hair stand on end. Just looking at it would make one go through a sanity check. In the next moment, the enemy attacked. Countless fingers exploded with a bang, and like a black torrential rain, they came down on the two of them. Spirit channels open, light of day, 9 worlds flow. Omit below Aurora shield. Little magic power gushed out from little Wanner's body, turning into a thin shield that protected the two of them. Little Wan, sorry, Sister Zhu. When this is over, I will tell you everything. Little Wan took a deep breath and focused all her attention on the enemy. Fortunately, although its appearance was very disgusting, its destructive power was still at the level of a nightmare. If the enemy was really strong enough to be one of the 3 great calamities. No, even if it was a derivative of the 7 calamities with Little Wan's current strength, she could only laugh and type GG. Zhu Shutong looked at Little Wan seriously, and then nodded as if she understood something. Alright, then I will tell you about the new discovery that I made earlier. Under normal circumstances, humans are unable to enter the mirror, but there are exceptions. Once that kind of monster appears, as long as it is a certain distance away from the mirror or before it retreats into the mirror, even ordinary people can freely enter and exit the mirror. Although I don't know how it works, this is one of the methods these monsters use to hunt. So that's how it is. Little Wan suddenly understood. Because she was able to enter and exit the mirror world as she wished when she was still a magical girl, she did not notice this aspect. The reason this thing appeared in the bucket is probably because the surface of the water acts as a mirror. In other words, if we defeat it here, we can enter that world. With Little Wan's reminder, Little Wan naturally understood this point. Spirit channels open, absorb, gather, extract, magic essence, begin. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Spell formation, magic ball, release. With this as the foundation, chant 3 times. 4 balls of light were released from the girl's fingertips one after another, fiercely bombarding the monster's body. However, only some of the monster's fingers were shaken off. The other fingers that were shaken off crawled on the ground like caterpillars, wriggling towards the girls. Be careful of the eyes. Lower your head. Zhu Shutong suddenly shouted. Little Wan subconsciously lowered her head, and the white light beam that shot out from the monster's eyeball was dodged by a hair's breadth. The bucket emitted a gurgling sound as if the water was boiling, and at the same time, more black silt-like substance surged out of the bucket. I made a mistake. Little Wan, let's quickly escape. I'm afraid this thing is really just a finger. If we wait any longer, the monster's main body might really appear. It's all right. Little Wan had experienced all kinds of battles, so naturally she would not be so easily shaken. On the contrary, Zhu Shutong, who was clearly just an ordinary person, was able to make a calm judgment in this situation. This was obviously more valuable. Chant 4 times, correct construction, distance, distance, accuracy, arrow shape, shoot. The magic arrow accurately hit the bucket that appeared from the finger, smashing it into pieces. The finger flickered twice, and then disappeared like a television with bad reception. This allowed the 2 girls to breathe a sigh of relief. Although they had lost the opportunity to enter the mirror world, as long as they searched, they would definitely be able to find other opportunities. In comparison, it was too dangerous to face that monster head-on. At this time, the earth rumbled as if there was an earthquake. Zhu Shutong's face paled. Wait, if this guy can appear from the water. Little Wan also seemed to have thought of something, and the blood on her face disappeared. Next to the New Deer City Public Cemetery was a small lake. A loud roar that made people feel pain in their ears came from not far away. With the 120-meter-high hill in the eastern suburbs as the background, a black giant that was almost half the height of the hill slowly stood up from the lake. If one looked carefully, one could see that the monster was missing a finger on its right hand. The monster just waved its hand, and a piece of the hill beside it was blasted off. Little Wan gritted her teeth and ran over there. Little Wan, what are you doing? Zhu Shutong exclaimed. Sister Zhu, quickly run. This time I must. Little Wan shouted resolutely. If I fight with my life, if I burn my life like the first magical girl in the legend, I might be able to win. Even if it's me, I can definitely do it. Mare, please help me. However, in this world, as if mocking her determination, a huge monster appeared in the sky of Deer City. The sky seemed to be collapsing. Fortunately, it was not a new monster but the piece of land that was dug out of Deer City. The piece of land that carried countless high-rise buildings, cars and trees. Sadly, although the land appeared right above the sinkhole, when the piece of land fell to the ground, it could not fill the sinkhole. Instead, the moment it hit the ground, it created a shockwave that destroyed the remaining 4/5 of Deer City. Different from the city center, there were basically no residential areas. In addition, the previous big hole incident happened at night, so only 100,000 people were killed. Deer City's surrounding population exceeded 1 million. Even with the most optimistic estimation, this collision would cause 1 million people to die. If she burned her life, she might be able to block it, but this way the remaining ordinary people would be massacred by the nightmare giant. Ordinary people's weapons had almost no effect on this kind of monster formed by evil thoughts. If she chose to kill the nightmare giant, then Deer City would be completely destroyed. Not to mention other things, her adoptive parents would definitely die in this disaster. Chapter 336. Let's rewind time to the previous Earth. That's when our hero was still troubled by the unhealthy eating habits of his family's lowly. No, I don't think it's just unhealthy. Qin Xingyan complained. By the way, is it really okay for Emily to eat that? Don't worry, Su Xinxing gave her a thumbs up and said proudly, other than green peppers, goblins and holy swords, Emily can eat almost anything. I can't find anything in common with the 3 examples you gave. Su Xinxing thought about it carefully and realized that he couldn't seem to find anything in common with those 3 things. So he coughed dryly and continued, in short, Jasmine must have found a way, so she did this. Is that really the case, Emily? Qin Xingyan's attention was diverted, and he asked Emily worriedly, is your stomach really okay? Jasmine nodded and then let out a small burp. Then many lines of blue light appeared on the floor under her feet and formed something like a magic formation. But if you looked closely, you would find that the runes on the magic formation were more similar to the runes on the oracle bone inscriptions and the concave string inscriptions on the Queen Mother Wu cauldron. Then the light of the magic formation gradually faded and was replaced by the image of a large bronze mirror. I'm ready. Emily raised her hands as if she was cheering. This time, even when Su Xinxing stood on it, the image of the bronze mirror didn't disappear. Instead, it continued to emit an incredible light, indicating that it was still working. Qin Xingyan sighed and followed. Yuezhing Ningning saw this and also stood on it suspiciously. I'll stay and watch the house, Chihaya Fukuyama said lazily. Yesterday's school anniversary celebration was too much for me. If Chihaya-sama wants to stay, then I'll stay too. As Chihaya Fukuyama's loyal lackey. Servant, Asahi Sakura Kanji immediately said. Song Yu hesitated for a moment, then also walked into the image of the bronze mirror. As a result, as soon as she stepped in, ripples appeared on the bronze mirror's reflection, as if a stone had been thrown into a river. The reflection itself also became blurry. Beep beep, if you're overweight, speak. Emily imitated the sound of the elevator alarm. Everyone's eyes focused on Song Yu, who was the last one to step. I'm not that heavy. Song Yu wanted to cry. Unlike Qin Xingyan, Chong Shaoxian and other superhumans, Song Yu was an ordinary young girl. Although she didn't control her weight to within a few dozen grams, she was still the type that took weight very seriously. Now that something like this happened, she was naturally very concerned. It's not that you're overweight, it's just that there's a limit to the number of people you can bring with you at one time. Su Xinxing very considerately explained for her, if you really want to go when we get there, you can ask Emily to pull you over. No need. How could a man have such power? However, since the other party was brought back by Yuezhing Ningning, it was not convenient for the girl to say anything. She thought for a moment and felt that with Yuezhing Ningning here and with his strength that could defeat the 3 great calamities, although he ran to Su Xinxing's world and revived, defeating the nightmare giant should not be a problem. So she simply said, if that's the case, I'll lead this mister to the big hollow. If this mister with a subtle hairline was really an unreliable person, then her self-sacrifice could at least reduce the destructive power of that thing to a minimum. As soon as she said that, everyone looked at her strangely. Although the land did not seem to be falling fast from a distance, this was also because the land was too far away from the ground. Even if it did not break through the speed of sound, its speed had already reached an astonishing level. Even if it did not break through the speed of sound, it had already reached an astonishing speed. Even if they ran from here to there, the daylilies would be smashed away. Besides, even if this was not the case, Su Xinxing was not blind. With such a large piece of land falling from the sky, naturally he could see where it fell. Why would he need a guide? Su Shenxing, on the other hand, hammered his hand and showed an expression that said this is a good idea. After all, if they were to attack from here, it would be awkward if they were not careful. It was better to run to the ground and attack. Understood, since you said so. Su Shenxing looked at the distance from here to the hollowed-out city center. Then let's go there. Yuezhing Ningning immediately showed an expression that said, Holiest *T, are you serious? But it's a little far from here. If you don't mind, Su Shenxing said as he carried Mei Weiner in a princess carry and showed a bright smile. Let me take you with me. Qin Xingyan, who seemed to understand something, ran to the side and held an empty grave as he retched. Wait. Mei Weiner's face was burning because she was being carried by a stranger. She was so shy that she felt like her face was burning. Just as she said that word, the two figures disappeared. How did Xiao Weiner suddenly disappear? Zhu Shutong exclaimed in shock. It's just an afterimage, Emily said expressionlessly with his hands on his hips. Then she snorted as if she was satisfied. Her face showed a cute expression that said, I've been wanting to say this line for a long time. It was only then that Mei Weiner's long and strange scream due to the Doppler effect was heard. Even Lu Zheng and Ningning, who had been a little confused a moment ago, turned pale. Hey, is it really okay? That scream is even more pitiful than being tied to an A86 and racing through 5 turns with a group of sports cars. Zhu Shutong, who was the only one who didn't have a clear understanding of ordinary people's high-speed trains, said worriedly, Today the landlord. Emily said slowly. He was unexpectedly in high spirits. What do you mean by unexpectedly in high spirits? Perverted? Demonic beast? But that guy didn't wear glasses. What kind of scary play was that? Zhu Shutong's face was filled with shock. Emily looked at Qin Xingyan, who was still retching, and said seriously. Vomit play. That's what kind of play was that? I'm sorry for interrupting your happy conversation. Yuezhing Ningning's voice sounded a little nervous. But that guy is coming. Probably because it was annoyed by the group of girls. After Su Shenxing left, the pitch-black nightmare giant stopped disconnecting and threw a punch at the group. Although it was a circle, in reality, it was more like a pitch-black cloud of dark clouds. If one took a closer look, they would discover that the so-called dark cloud was actually made up of countless finger-sized black worm-like creatures that looked like a combination of an empty finger and an 8-eyed eel. Even a person with no common sense would know that these creatures were not friendly when they saw their disgusting appearance and sharp teeth. Yuezhing Ningning touched the wizard hat on her head. With a flash of white light, the casual clothes that Asahi Sakura Kanji prepared for her turned into a maid outfit that combined wizard and wizard attire. It maintained the mystery of a witch and the cuteness of a maid. This was Yuezhing Ningning's magical girl form. It was a pity that Sereno's consciousness had disappeared. Otherwise, he could have used the magical power in the girl's body to unleash an even more powerful truth form that could defeat the incarnations of the 3 calamities in one go. This was the form she used when she was chasing the Holy Ring at the beginning of the school anniversary chapter. If Su Shenxing was still here, he would definitely yell something along the lines of, a magical girl without a transformation animation is not a good magical girl. While Yuezhing Ningning and Zhu Shutong were still on guard, Emily looked at the dark cloud and the nightmare behind it and said softly, pause. It was as if someone had pressed the pause button on a video that was playing. The dark cloud, the strange creatures in the dark cloud, and the terrifying nightmare giant all froze in place. Perish. With Emily's second sentence, the black creatures were like ice cubes near a furnace. They quickly melted and turned into a black downpour that fell from the sky. As for the nightmare giant, it directly collapsed, transforming into a black flood that scattered in all directions. Disappear. The moment the black rain was about to fall to the ground, Emily said softly again. Thus, whether it was the rain or the flood, it was as if they were completely erased from this world, disappearing without a trace. Even the nightmare giant that appeared as a door and dyed the lake black was now completely devoid of ink. It was clear as if it had been washed. The menacing and terrifying monster disappeared without a trace from the girl's 3 casual sentences. Yuezhing Ningning, who was still on guard, couldn't help but feel that it was unreal. Are you joking? It's actually so simple. Zhu Shutong looked in shock at Emily, who acted as if nothing had happened. One had to know that just a single finger from the nightmare giant had nearly killed her and Mei Weiner. At this moment Yuezhing Ningning suddenly thought of something. When she had found the holy ring in Jiangjin University as a cat, the holy ring had once caused the three great calamities to awaken. Moreover, it wasn't a single incarnation of the three great calamities that she had defeated before, but an amalgamation of them. The moment she thought she was done for, this little girl called Emily appeared out of nowhere and slapped the amalgamation of the three great calamities to death. It was only at this moment that Lu Zheng and Ningning reacted. Could it be that she had unknowingly brought a group of somewhat illegal reinforcements to her world? Chapter 338. Oh, looks like Emily is doing a good job. Su Shenxing stood on the rooftop of half of the building, looking at the gradually disintegrating black giant more than 10 kilometers away. He sighed. Sure enough, it was the right choice to let her deal with this kind of swarm monster. The reason why it was called half of the building was because nearly half of the building, which was located on the edge of the Big Hollow, was in the Big Hollow. Even the ground had been dug away. At this time, it was falling from above Su Shenxing's head at a speed close to Mach 1. By the way, Mei Weiner, who was carried over by Su Shenxing, was lying in the corner of the rooftop, staring blankly at the sky. If he had to find an adjective to describe her current expression, it would probably be broken. Sure enough, sublight speed is still too much for the people of this world. In short, Su Shenxing regrettably found that the other party might not be able to come back to her senses in a short time. In that case, no one could blame him for leaving the other party behind and going it alone. If it drags on for too long, then my dignity as a landlord will be a little bit lacking. Thinking of this, Su Shenxing put one hand on his forehead and looked at the sky. At this moment, the sunlight in the vicinity had been completely blocked by the huge piece of land in the sky, casting a huge shadow. Below the building was also a scene of chaos. Although the government of this world seemed to have set up temporary residences in the suburbs, and there were no ordinary residents living near the Big Hollow, the military and some scientific researchers seemed to be stationed nearby, wanting to find out the mystery of the Big Hollow. Now that they had suddenly encountered this situation, they were naturally caught off guard. It should be known that although Su Shenxing had taken advantage of the situation for about 2 minutes, it had only been more than 2 minutes since the land in the sky had appeared until now. Putting aside Su Shenxing, who was a superman who could run from more than 10 kilometers away to this place in a second, the human station below had probably just reacted. At most, they could barely get into the car and start it. So what should I do now? He looked at the earth that was gradually enlarging in his field of vision without any sense of nervousness. In the face of such a situation, the simplest way was to shatter the land with a punch. If the force of the punch was controlled to the extent that it would not break the Earth's atmosphere, the land would probably be shattered into countless baseball-sized gravel. Although there was Su Shenxing's punch as a buffer, the power of the stone falling from that height was still not low. At least the residents of the outer layer of the city and the motorcade that was fleeing out of the city would be injured to a certain extent. If Su Shenxing wanted to use a gentler method, he could do it. For example, he would first use the cloud scale to support the falling land and take all the damage caused by the falling land. It would probably break a hole in his socks. Then he would cast a floating protection on the land, allowing it to float in the air. If he didn't want to be noticed by ordinary people, he could also add on a shield of concealment. However, this protection was only an optical invisibility. It couldn't really make things disappear. Therefore, the chances of it being discovered by ordinary people were quite high. To be honest, Su Shenxing didn't want to use this plan. It was not that he cared about his socks. Anyway, even if there was a hole, he could just patch it up and wear it. The key was that his protection would often leave some kind of powerful energy on the objects that were protected. If this world was a magical world, then this kind of mysterious power from the east would not be a big deal. After all, the people in that world were used to mysterious powers that could not be analyzed. At worst, they could just blame it on the gods or something. After all, the gods couldn't come down to the mortal world to smooth things out for them, right? However, this world was an ordinary technology-oriented world. The technology tree was almost no different from Su Shenxing's Earth. In terms of supernatural forces, it was more fragile. There were almost no supernatural forces except for magical girls. It should be known that on Su Shenxing's Earth, there were at least cultivators, yin-yang masters, exorcists, and so on. This was a bit troublesome. After all, humans were a race that could make mobile phone washing machines and blow them up for fun when they had nothing to do. There was never a shortage of people who were full of the spirit of seeking death. If someone really used some kind of method to trigger the energy existing in the protection, then this world could only lead to the fourth great extinction. Moreover, Su Xinxing's power, physical, was different from the apocalyptic thoughts of the world destroyer. It could not be blocked by the spirit of sacrifice, the will of the guardian, or so on. If one wanted to block it, at least a planet-level phase shield or the highest level of guardian words would be needed. Su Xinxing, who could not live in this world for long, naturally could not stop the disaster in time. His original intention was to save a city, but it ended up causing the end of the world. This was King embarrassing. Sure enough, it's better to destroy it directly. With that, Su Xinxing summoned the Holy Sword of the End, Roland Duel. Interestingly, the moment Roland Duel appeared, all the creatures in the whole world, not just Earth but all the creatures in the entire universe, seemed to feel a strange shaking feeling in the world. Oh, are they afraid? This world actually has self-awareness. It seems that this world is a level higher than the lattice world. No, even the world I'm in is a level higher. This discovery surprised Su Xinxing. Among the worlds he had transmigrated to, probably only Auravia and the great demonic realm were of a higher level than this world. Strange, although the aura in the atmosphere is indeed much higher than that of Earth, this level is not rare in the lattice world. Why is the level of this world so high? Although he felt a little puzzled, Su Xinxing did not stop what he was doing. He raised the holy sword in his hand, and spots of golden light began to gather on the silver blade. As the holy sword that killed the world, even if it did nothing, as long as Roland Duel appeared, the power of the world itself would be involuntarily attracted and gathered on it. However, Su Xinxing did not intend to wield the sword this time. Once he did so, the space in this area would be immediately cut open. In this unstable situation, it was likely that there would be a state of spatial disorder. If the land that fell from the sky was teleported to other places, it would be a big problem. And for Su Xinxing there was no need to wield the sword. In the name of Flash Halatic, show your brilliance, Roland Duel. A huge incandescent light suddenly lit up over the city, and the light like a nuclear explosion swallowed the huge land in an instant. The white light did not slow down because of the land and continued to burst into the sky. Even from the satellite orbit, the white light gradually began to fade after the terrifying white light could be seen. However, it was as if the piece of land had never appeared at all. It had completely disappeared in the blazing white light. That's right, there was no need to wield the sword. Just 1/12 of the Holy Sword's true name was enough to completely annihilate and evaporate the land that fell from the sky. Okay, the effect is not bad. Now go and retrieve Mo Li. After putting away Roland Duel, Su Xinxing nodded with satisfaction and continued. Chapter 339. After Su Xinxing and Mo Li split up and successfully dealt with the earth and nightmares that descended from the sky, they once again gathered at the cemetery. Of course, Mei Weiner had finally regained her consciousness, but because of Su Xinxing's ordinary high-speed train, she once again went into a daze and took a long time to regain her senses. Whoa, is this my grave? It feels so strange. Looking at the picture of her on the grave, Yuezhing Ningning couldn't help but reveal an expression of disbelief. Senior Ye's grave is also here, but because Senior Ling wasn't a local, her grave isn't nearby, Mei Weiner added. Is that so? I can't see Ling's grave. Yuezhing Ningning laughed self-deprecatingly. I don't know if this is a good or bad thing for me. Another thing worth mentioning was that Zhu Shatong had already confirmed that Yuezhing Ningning's family wasn't involved in the Big Hole incident. Although they were grieving because of Yuezhing Ningning's death, at least their health was still good. Are you really not going to see your family before following us to continue investigating the nightmares? Su Xinxing asked curiously. There's no need. It's not strange if anything happens during the investigation. Compared to the grief of losing a family member, the impact of losing something again is much greater. Also, the nightmare situation is very strange. This is a problem that could threaten the safety of the entire world. It's better to focus on the more important side first. Yuezhing Ningning subconsciously hid her hands behind her back and lowered her eyes as she said softly, if it's really successful, it won't be too late to see them after everything has come to an end. Is it an illusion? Why do I feel like you're raising a death flag? Su Shenxing scratched his head. But since you've said so, let's go with what you think for now. Because they were talking about the main topic, their expressions became slightly more serious. Just as Yuezhing Ningning had said, the nightmare looked very strange. No, it was a more fundamental contradiction. Since the nightmares were monsters born from the 3 calamities and 7 calamities, then theoretically, after Yuezhing Ningning and the others defeated the incarnations of the 3 calamities and 7 calamities, the nightmares should have all disappeared and never appeared again. Even if they took a step back and considered the possibility of awakening from the 3 calamities and 7 disasters, the source of their power, the Holy Ring, wasn't in this world at that time. Then what kind of power gave birth to a monster like the Nightmare Giant? Sorry, I'm interrupting. When Yuezhing Ningning was describing what she found strange, Su Shenxing suddenly raised his hand like a primary school student and asked a question. Zhu Shutong, who was about to fall asleep because she couldn't understand what Yuezhing Ningning was saying, suddenly became alert. Who's talking? Of course, what she got in return was the looks of disdain from the crowd. Only Mo Li ran to her side and patted her shoulder. Then he gave her a thumbs up and said, "Don't mind. Don't comfort me. Isn't that even more pathetic? Also, you spelled mind wrong." Putting aside the jokes, Su Shenxing continued to ask Yuezhing Ningning, "How did you find out about the nightmares and the 3 calamities and 7 calamities? Was it one of your former companions who specially researched and verified it?" "How? Of course it was from Sereno and the others." Yuezhing Ningning blinked her eyes and answered matter-of-factly, "They told us about this." "Sereno?" Su Shenxing slightly creased his eyebrows. What the hell was that? Why did the other party look as if it was only natural? Could it be common knowledge in this world? In order to maintain the image of an enlightened person, should he pretend that he knew it very well and was just testing them? While Su Shenxing was still struggling in his heart, Yuezhing Ningning came back to her senses. "Sereno is my Magitech." She flicked the brim of her wizard hat. This hat originally had self-consciousness. But in order to repair the Holy Ring and fulfill my wish, it sacrificed itself and its consciousness completely dissipated. "Oh, Magitech." Su Shenxing showed a look of sudden realization. Yes, all magical girls have Magitech. At the same time, only under the guidance of the Magitech can we transform. It is said that the Magitech was the first magical girl, the great one who didn't even leave behind a name, and one of the 7 items that she carried with her. As she spoke, Yuezhing Ningning turned to look at Mei Weiner, who had been silent for a long time. "So, compared to us, the Magitech itself should know more about this." "Weiner, where's your Mei? Mei is also dead." Mei Weiner lowered her head sadly. "In the mirror world, in order to save my life, it was completely shattered." "Is that so? No wonder you didn't transform just now." Yuezhing Ningning couldn't help but sigh. She didn't know what to say to comfort the sad little girl. "What's the mirror world?" Su Shenxing heard some strange words from their conversation. "It's a special space barrier that can be entered through a mirror as a medium. It is also the buffer zone when the nightmares invade this world. In the beginning we fought against the nightmares in the mirror world. Only a few special nightmares can directly invade the real world through the mirror world without being detected by us." Yuezhing Ningning began to explain the settings. Su Shenxing understood the meaning behind her words. To put it simply, if this world was an apple, then the outside of the apple was wrapped in a layer of foamed plastic. When all the pests wanted to touch the apple, they had to bite through the foamed plastic first. The so-called magical girl acted as an insecticide when the pests bit through the foamed plastic and poisoned them to death. "Is that big guy also a special type?" After Su Shenxing told Qin Xingyan his summary of the worldview that even Mo Li could understand, the girl who had been silent until now finally opened her mouth to ask. Body size and whether or not it's a special type of nightmare have no direct relationship. However, the nightmare just now really wasn't a special type of nightmare. Although its appearance is very strange and we have never encountered such a huge monster formed by countless small monsters, it's still just a normal nightmare. Yuezhing Ningning explained. Because the previous magical girl seniors of this era have all died in the line of duty, Senior Ningning's whereabouts are unknown, and I have lost most of my abilities as a magical girl, so I wasn't able to detect the invasion of this monster. Mei Weiner said somewhat shamefully, "No, it's not just this monster. In fact, I'm afraid that many nightmares have already infiltrated the human world. Other than magical girls, humans seem to be unable to directly observe monsters like nightmares. However, nightmares could normally touch objects and humans, so even if nightmares really did come into this world, unless they bumped into this group of people, normal people wouldn't be able to detect them at all. By the way, Zhu Shutong's ability to see nightmares seemed to be because she had been attacked by nightmares and survived, causing her body to mutate a little. This was why she could see those monsters as a normal person. Really? Su Xinxing couldn't help but feel a headache coming on. After all, he was the worst at searching and sensing. That's right, I still have evidence. When Zhu Shutong saw that it was time for her to appear, she immediately took out her iPad from her small backpack, opened a video and handed it to Su Xinxing. Su Xinxing took the iPad and looked at it. His entire body was petrified and the corners of his eyes couldn't help but twitch. Just when Qin Xingyan and the others were still feeling strange about Su Xinxing's state, a loud shout came from the iPad, "Boy! Next door!" Thus, other than the relatively pure Mei Weiner who had a face of curiosity, everyone else was a bit confused. Alright, there was also the unaffected Mo Li who took out some candy from Zhu Shutong's backpack. He silently chewed on it as if he had no interest in the calcium tablets in Su Xinxing's hands. "Shutong, you're actually looking at this?" Yuezhing Ningning looked at her childhood friend and felt that during the time she was in a vegetative state, she seemed to have suffered from some sort of subtle and indescribable poison. "Wait, this is a misunderstanding." "Wait a minute, Ningning, how do you know about this?" Zhu Shutong said in a panic. Don't remind me of the time when a certain witch preached to me." Yuezhing Ningning's expression was as if she couldn't bear to look back. Qin Xingyan beside her also showed an expression of 400% synchronization. "I'm just a bit curious. The correct video is this." In short, Zhu Shutong hurriedly snatched the iPad back from Su Xinxing's hands and opened the correct video. She then handed it back to him and took the time to shout at Mo Li, "You over there, don't mess up my bag." The video was naturally a series of people being attacked by monsters that couldn't be seen in the mirror. However, the number of videos collected by Zhu Shutong had increased a lot in the past few days. "Then can we enter the mirror world now?" Su Xinxing asked naturally after watching the video. "Only a magical girl can do it." Yuezhing Ningning recovered from the fact that her friend had started to rot. She casually pointed at the air and the water on the ground floated into the air and condensed into an ice mirror. "Normal people can't do it," she said as she reached out her hand. Sure enough, the moment her hand touched the ice mirror, her hand naturally went into the mirror as if it was water. Su Xinxing tried it, but of course it didn't work. After all, regardless of profession, just the gender alone was not right. Qin Xingyan also failed. Mei Weiner, who had lost her magical girl ability, had already proven that she had lost the ability to enter the mirror world. Zhu Shutong was just a normal person. Other than being able to see nightmares, she was no different from a normal person. This made Su Xinxing somewhat helpless. Even if he summoned the holy sword to cut open space, it might not be able to cut into the mirror world. Was he going to let Yuezhing Ningning enter the mirror world alone? If that was the case, what was the point of him coming to this world? Suddenly, Mo Li let out a small cry of surprise. Everyone subconsciously looked at her and saw that the little girl was holding the makeup mirror that she had dug out from Zhu Shutong's backpack. On the surface of the mirror was something that looked like a black hole in the anime. "The door to the mirror world, I think I accidentally opened it." Chapter 340. At first, Su Xinxing thought that the so-called mirror world was a world reversed from the outside world, but when he really entered it, he found that he seemed to be wrong. The mirror world was like an extra-dimensional space, full of messy and illogical things. For example, in front of him there was a mountain of Mont Blanc, also known as chestnut cake, more than 100 meters high. It was not a mountain piled up by many Mont Blanc, but a single Mont Blanc was as huge as a mountain. Although Su Xinxing had entered some relatively strange worlds before, some of them also had huge food. For example, in the lattice world he liberated, there was a world that produced huge fruits. Each fruit in that world was so huge that a cart could only transport one apple. The grapes were as big as footballs and tomatoes could be eaten directly on the head. As far as Su Xinxing knew, there seemed to be no famine in that world. But after all, those things were naturally produced while Mont Blanc cake was artificially made food. Obviously they could not be compared. In short, just by looking at the cake, Su Shenxing could be sure that this so-called mirror world was definitely not as simple as it was naturally formed. Even if he took 10,000 steps back, there must be some existence that transformed it into what it was now. By the way, by the time everyone came in, Emily had already eaten 1/5 of the Mont Blanc mountain, and for some reason the missing piece looked like a tooth mark. In addition, just like before when she ate the Kunlun mirror, except for Su Shenxing, no one saw Emily's table manners. Interestingly, Emily clearly ate as much as 1/5 of the mountain, but her body shape did not change, so no one knew where all the food she ate went. Carrying Emily, who was a little full on his back, Su Shenxing set off with everyone. If they stayed in place, they would not be able to see anything. Only as they continued to move forward and see more things, it was possible to find clues from them. Crossing the mighty river composed of milk and honey, Su Shenxing asked Yuezhing Ningning, "Did you fight in this place before?" "Well, that's right. Although the place we enter the mirror world is different every time, it's basically the same style." Yuezhing Ningning nodded. "Desserts and sweets are fine. I've also seen areas with toys and strange medicines." That's right, that's right. I once went to a place full of dolls. When I fought there, I always felt like those dolls were looking at me. It was very strange." Mei Weiner, who used to be a magical girl, nodded and said with lingering fear, "Even if it's the same mirror, the places you enter after entering are different?" Su Shenxing frowned and asked curiously, "I didn't pay attention to that. We usually chase after the nightmares, so we enter a different mirror every time." "We haven't specifically tested this," Yuezhing Ningning replied. Senior Ye seems to have done research in this area. She believes that the mirror world of each mirror is linked. Even if you don't enter from the same mirror as the nightmares, you can still find the nightmares. This way you can quickly provide support through the mirror world. But later, for some reason, this research stopped, Mei Weiner added. "I see." Su Shenxing rubbed his chin. Since the research stopped, it meant that the person called Ye realized that her research had failed, or that she had gone into a wrong direction. Although it couldn't be treated as the final conclusion, it could be used as a reference to assume that the existence of the mirror world itself was very ambiguous, just like the cat of a certain maniac who abused cats. Only when the nightmare and the magical girl entered the mirror world would the mirror world stabilize and form a specific space. Therefore, even if they entered the mirror world from two places or two mirrors, they would only form two different space bubbles. These two space bubbles would not be connected. It was probably because she vaguely realized this that the person called Ye gave up on her research. After Su Shenxing expressed his conjecture, Yuezhing Ningning was the first to raise doubts. "But I seem to have been to a place I've been to before. This doesn't match the space bubble conjecture you proposed. And speaking of which, why do you have such a conjecture? Even you said that it's a place you seem to have been to before." "Let's not talk about toys for now, but the appearance of the sweets themselves is very limited. If you want to know why, it's because the sweets in this world all have a standard appearance." As he spoke, Su Shenxing pulled out two pieces of the floor. They were black and white striped cookies. From the texture to the size, there is no difference at all. This is impossible in reality, but because this world is limited by standards, all the sweets are exactly the same. Therefore, as long as you see a space formed by the same sweets, you will subconsciously think that you've been to that place before. But is that really the case? Yuezhing Ningning was shocked speechless by Su Shenxing's discovery. Indeed, in the past they entered this space only to fight and crusade against the nightmares. They did not think about the nature of this space, so they did not discover this strange place. After all, it was not difficult to find that the texture of mung brown and other sweets were exactly the same. As for why I proposed this hypothesis, Su Shenxing smiled slightly and looked at the sky. There was nothing above, only a strange pink color. Because we have been going around in the same place. What? This time even Qin Xingyan was shocked. But the surrounding scenery, yes, the scenery is always changing, so it gives people the illusion that they have been walking and going to other places. But that's just an illusion. If I'm not wrong, every time you enter the mirror world after the crusade against the enemy, you leave this world in the same place. And when you return to Earth, you leave from the mirror that you entered the mirror world from, right? Su Shenxing continued. Yuezhing Ningning and Mei Weiner looked at each other and then nodded at the same time. Then don't you feel strange? Every time you fight, there will be a violent displacement, right? Why is the exit still next to you after the fight? Yuezhing Ningning and Mei Weiner looked at each other and found that the expressions on each other's faces were even more surprised. Right, such an obvious strange place, why didn't they notice it? Yuezhing Ningning thought more. When she was chasing the holy ring, she rushed out of the mirror world and fell into Su Xinxing's world. Was it because her sudden acceleration exceeded the control of the mirror world itself? Then why? In the end, Zhu Shutong couldn't hold back her curiosity and asked, why didn't Ningning and the others notice this? I'm afraid that their magic devices told them the way to leave after the first battle, so they subconsciously thought it was common sense. Just like 1 + 1 is equal to 2, no one will ask why 1 + 1 is equal to 2 as long as they know it when they use it. Su Xinxing guessed. Are you saying that Sereno and the others are lying to us? Yuezhing Ningning's body trembled slightly. The girl didn't want to admit this possibility from the bottom of her heart. After all, Sereno even burned his own consciousness to fulfill the girl's wish, and Mei Weiner's Marai also shattered to protect him. Although they didn't usually talk about it, it was likely that every magical girl would treat their magic devices as their companions. Being betrayed by such an existence was obviously a huge blow. No, magic devices are just magic devices after all. Maybe they themselves think so they didn't explain it to you. Fortunately, Su Xinxing's words made the girl feel a little relieved. At the same time, Su Xinxing was also trying to figure out what the real culprit behind this scene was. At first he thought that it was the world itself that was causing trouble. After all, the world had self-consciousness and there were many similar plots in games and anime. Earth thought that the humans on its body were cancer, and in order to protect the environment, it used some method to create an apocalyptic disaster to destroy the human race. But when he thought about it carefully, it didn't seem like it. Which troublemaker would like to have acne all over their body? If the mirror world was really a space bubble outside the world, then wouldn't it be acne and the kind that couldn't be squeezed out? So what should we do now? Yuezhing Ningning asked with a frown. At that moment, Mo Li burped, then rubbed Su Xinxing's back and went back to sleep. Then in front of everyone, an illusory and vague shadow appeared out of thin air. I've heard a lot about you, the person who killed the world. It spoke slowly in a manner that was not a voice, but one that was incomprehensible. However, everyone present was able to understand it. Chapter 341. Kill the world, what? Yuezhing Ningning was frightened by the words of the shadow formed by the white light rather than a human figure. She stared at Su Xinxing and no one knew what she was thinking. Yes, the person you have placed your hopes on has also destroyed the world, and the sword in his hand was made to kill the world. The shadow said slowly. You're quite well informed. The corners of Su Xinxing's mouth curled up as he stared at the illusory figure. Between our worlds, there will occasionally be an exchange of information. So many worlds will produce the same creations such as human beings. If that's the case, then you should have some understanding of my style, right? Su Xinxing stared at the shadow and said coldly, if you continue to be so mysterious and change the topic. Although I have recently washed my hands of the gold basin, if I only kill the world's consciousness and not destroy the world itself, it should be barely considered as safe. What do you think? Actually, I don't know the answer you want to know. Probably because Su Xinxing's threat was effective, the shadow did not continue to talk about other things. Instead, she said slowly, because my birth is only to maintain the normal operation of the world. In addition, things that have nothing to do with this are not within my jurisdiction, and I will not pay attention to those things. Just like this time, if I did not show up under the influence of killing the world's people, the operation of the world will inevitably be abnormal, so I am here. Are the nightmares and the 3 disasters, 7 disasters not things that will affect the normal operation of the world? Yuezhing Ningning frowned and asked, obviously very dissatisfied with the answer. Unfortunately, their existence will not affect the operation of the world. At most, the creatures called humans on Earth will be replaced by creatures called nightmares. That's all. Yes, for the world itself, the extinction of creatures, or even the mass extinction of creatures on a planet is just a normal situation. In theory, as long as the world is not affected at all, it is not within its jurisdiction. Su Xinxing sighed. But the few world wills I know will participate in the historical development of creatures according to their own preferences within the scope of not interfering with the operation of the world. and thus develop monotheistic religions and the like. In a sense, it is a truly selfless world that does not care about anything except the operation of the world itself. This is the first time I have seen a world like this. After saying that, he added, by the way, the will of the world that I killed in the past also caused a few apocalypses because of its own preferences, just to kill those humans who had already developed into the interstellar era. I don't want to know this information at all. Now she was completely unclear whether she found reliable reinforcements or a terrifying monster. Yuezhing Ningning muttered helplessly. Although I really don't know anything about this, if you must know, I can introduce you to someone who has done research on this. Just as Su Xinxing was still considering whether to use some physical means to make the will of the world seek personal gain, the other party seemed to know his plan and spoke. Who are you talking about? Melanie asked carefully. Although she could not believe that the guy in front of her was the will of the world, this did not prevent the girl, who was more delicate by nature, from using honorifics and honorifics. I will inform that existence in advance. If you continue to walk forward in this mirror world, you will be able to reach the other party's residence. Also, if it is convenient, can you please put away the weapon that was created to kill the world? Su Xinxing snorted softly and Roland Duel disappeared. Thus, the originally turbulent world immediately stabilized. Although the expression of the shadow could not be seen, even the relatively slow Zhu Shadong could clearly feel that the other party seemed to be relieved and became a little more relaxed. Before they could ask the will of the world anything, the other party suddenly disappeared and the whole space suddenly darkened. It wasn't quite right to say that the world had darkened, because the degree of light now was actually the same as daytime. However, because the light of the world's will was too bright when it disappeared, it gave people the illusion that the world had darkened. After everyone looked at each other, Su Xinxing took the lead and began to walk in the mirror world. Not long after, the sound of glass breaking came from all directions. The seemingly beautiful mirror world was fragmented, and what appeared in front of everyone was a bottomless darkness. They were standing on the only platform in this dark world. In front of the platform, a stone-paved road meandered forward. Su Xinxing frowned and began to feel a little tired of this kind of mystifying behavior. Unlike Yuezhing Ningning and the others, as the savior who once talked and laughed with the Demon King, what kind of big scene had he not seen? In a situation like this, either the person mentioned by the will of the world was teasing them, or the other party was stalling for time. Either way, it was not the situation Su Xinxing wanted. You guys wait for me here. So he simply said to everyone. In the next moment, his figure disappeared from this place. Just when everyone still did not know what had happened and began to feel a little confused, Su Xinxing appeared in front of them again. But at this time there was something in his hand. It was a little girl who could be called a young girl. She was wearing a pointed wizard hat and a witch's black robe that was too big for her. Because Su Xinxing was holding her by the collar, she was trying to wave her short limbs, trying to struggle out, but it was useless. Yuezhing Ningning wanted to ask something, but then she noticed the hat on the little girl's head. Sereno. That's right, the hat on the little girl's head was exactly the same as Yuezhing Ningning's magic device. Not only Yuezhing Ningning, but even Melanie was stunned when she saw the necklace on the little girl's neck. But I already. I saw it with my own eyes. Then Yuezhing Ningning seemed to have realized something and ran to the little girl's side. Sure enough, she found a grimoire on the little girl's waist. It was exactly the same as her best friend Ling's magic device. Who is she? Yuezhing Ningning looked at Su Xinxing and could not help but ask a little excitedly. There are two huge mountain ranges at the end of this road. After crossing the mountain ranges, there is a river as wide and rapid as a river. After that, there is a staircase made of clouds that leads to the sky. This guy is hiding there. He even plans to create a huge pea vine to hide higher. Su Xinxing shook the little girl in his hand, making the little girl protest. However, because of the little girl's lisp, Su Xinxing did not understand what she was saying at all. That was so rude of me. I'm the big boss behind the mirror world, the last witch. After Su Xinxing stopped shaking her, the little girl waved her hands again, like a little Brazilian tortoise being held up by its shell. She said, "What's wrong with a noble person like me having to walk a little more to meet? The last witch? Do you think I can pass as long as I kill you?" Su Xinxing's eyes became dangerous. "Well, I'm just kidding." The little girl immediately admitted defeat. "So who the hell are you and why do you have our magic device?" Yuezhing Ningning hurriedly asked. Ah, the last, which was indeed a lie, but the mirror world was indeed created by me and I. The young girl thought for a moment, then said with uncertainty, it's probably an aggregation of the memories left by the dead magical girls, right? To be honest, I don't really understand. Dead magical girls? Melissa's face was a little ugly. Yes, you know very well that you are not the first generation of magical girls. As early as 1,000 years ago, magical girls already existed, although the saying is not the same as modern times. Probably after measuring her strength and finding that she was not Su Xinxing's opponent, the little girl answered honestly, a long time ago, although there were nightmares, there was no mirror world at that time. To be precise, there were no mirrors at that time. In short, those nightmares would directly appear in the real world and attack humans. About a few hundred years ago I woke up. Although I don't know what's going on, when I woke up, I knew that creating and maintaining the mirror world was my job. It was because of the birth of the mirror world that human casualties were reduced to a relatively small number. At the same time, this is also why there were records of various monsters and demons in ancient times, but the more modern times, the fewer such records are. No wonder most of the mirror world was filled with desserts and toys, because the creator was a little girl. As time passed, I gradually discovered some reasons. If I'm not wrong, the reason for my appearance is because of your magic devices. They spent a lot of time with human magical girls, and in the end they turned from objects with simple thinking circuits into creatures with real souls. In the process, they gradually fell in love with humans. Of course, they probably didn't realize it themselves. In short, in order to protect humans and reduce the concerns of the magical girls, the 7 of them subconsciously collected the thoughts of the magical girls who once died and turned them into my existence. Although she was talking about her past, the way the little girl described it with an expressionless face was a little subtle and strange. By the way, as an existence constructed by the subconscious of the 7 magic devices, my appearance is very likely based on their dead original owner, the original magical girl. It's just that because of the lack of power it's now like this. Su Xinxing thought for a moment, then comforted her. It's okay, your short legs are quite cute. Yuezhing Ningning decisively ignored Su Xinxing's jesting and asked the little girl, then why did the nightmares appear after we defeated the incarnations of the 3 disasters and took the holy ring away from this world? Defeating the incarnations of the 3 disasters and the 7 disasters is what the magical girls of every generation have to do. And in the process, there will be casualties among the magical girls. Of course, after making a wish through the power of the holy ring, the dead magical girls will be resurrected. It's just that those magical girls who are resurrected will not live for long. The young girl continued to speak expressionlessly, making Lu Zheng and Ningning inexplicably feel a chill in their hearts. She thought of her grandmother. The reason why her grandmother died so young, could it be that she used the holy ring to resurrect her? Up until this point there was no problem. But the latter is a big problem. The holy ring is something that maintains the balance of this world. After making a wish, the holy ring will return to nothing and start to absorb the evil thoughts of humans from the beginning until it's full, and once again produce the incarnations of nightmares and disasters for the next generation of magical girls to crusade against. But after you defeated the incarnations of disasters, you didn't get the holy ring. Instead, it was lost in another world. The evil thoughts accumulated in this world have no place to stay, and in the end, they will naturally condense into nightmares and attack humans. The little girl sighed and continued, the reason why the nightmares you saw after returning this time are the type that doesn't have a fixed form is because they don't have the holy ring as a restraining device. Wait a minute. At this time, Su Xinxing suddenly interrupted her. I almost understand what you said, but there's one thing I'm a little curious about. He looked at her and asked curiously, Yuezhing Ningning and the others defeated the incarnations of disasters and purified the holy ring. From this point in time, most of the evil thoughts in this world have been purified, right? It's only been a few days, but the evil thoughts have accumulated to the extent that they can form monsters. Aren't there too many evil thoughts in this world? When did I say that the evil thoughts of humans absorbed by the holy ring are only from the humans of this world? The little girl blinked and said matter-of-factly, the world we're in is the place where the evil thoughts of humans from more than 700 worlds converge. Here is the first and last line of defense that protects the minds and souls of more than 700 worlds. Wah. Yuezhing Ningning and Melissa obviously didn't know this and they both looked surprised. Su Xinxing understood why this world's level was so high. It could accommodate the inflow of garbage information from more than 700 worlds. Although it was not as good as the Great Devil Realm, it was definitely much better than the average world. After Zhu Shutong tried hard to understand for a long time, she blinked twice and said as if she had suddenly realized something. So our world is still a meat BQ? This made everyone raise their eyebrows. Big sister, your comprehension ability is a little surprising. Chapter 342. At this point the situation was more or less clear. The world where the magical girls lived was like a huge garbage dump that contained the evil of humans from more than 700 other worlds. The Holy Ring was equivalent to a storage device that would start to produce nightmares after collecting all the evil of humans. When the evil of humans reached the point where it overflowed, it would awaken the incarnations of the 3 great disasters and the 7 calamities. Qin Xingyan, who finally understood the situation, opened her cherry lips slightly and showed an incredulous expression. In other words, Miss Yujing, no, the magical girls of this world have been fighting against the evil of 700 worlds with just 7 people? That's right, it was this seemingly inconceivable situation that had been maintained for thousands of years. Although every generation of magical girls would be destroyed in the final battle, and often only 1 or 2 of them would survive, no matter which generation, the magical girls would rely on the support of their own beliefs and the strength of only 7 people to achieve victory in this war that concerned the safety of the world. After defeating the final enemy and obtaining the purified Holy Ring, they would be able to rely on the power of the will of all the humans from more than 700 worlds that had been purified in the Holy Ring to achieve their wishes. When the power in the Holy Ring was completely exhausted, it would disappear and be reset as a container to contain the evil of humans. Everything would cycle back and forth like this, infinitely repeating without end. The existence of magical girls was undoubtedly the weakest link in this cycle. But every world can be self-consistent. Even if it's a symbiotic world, theoretically speaking, it's impossible for it to be born in such a deformed state. There must be something wrong. Su Xinxing touched his chin. Soon he thought of something similar from his knowledge. Something that could distort the world and lead it to destruction. It seemed that not long ago an executive lady from the Space Administration had introduced it to him. An incomprehensible thing. If the existence of UK in this world was a conclusion, then there was only one answer that was most likely to be UK. The Holy Ring that was located at the core of the entire cycle. If he thought about it carefully, the existence of the Holy Ring itself was very suspicious. Why would something like the Holy Ring exist in this world? The magical girls were born after the destroyer of the world failed to successfully destroy this world, using the 7 items that the girl who saved the world carried with her. Then why didn't the evil thoughts of the humans in the 700 worlds affect this world before this? Similarly, before this, where was the Holy Ring, something that didn't look like a human creation? If the Magitech's previous understanding of the 3 calamities and the 7 calamities was correct, these things were placed in this world by the destroyer of the world to test or destroy mankind. If that was the case, then it was likely that the Holy Ring was also left behind by the other party. It was used as the final insurance against the 3 great calamities and the 7 calamities. So that's how it is. If the hope of the 7 of us can defeat the malice of all the humans in the 700 worlds, then the world can continue to exist. Otherwise, it will walk towards destruction. At this moment Su Xinxing finally understood why the Holy Ring, the 3 disasters and 7 disasters, and the nature of this world were so deformed. However, the problem was that the world had already changed. Even if the Holy Ring was no longer in this world, the problem of the nightmares would not be solved. Similarly, as insurance, 5 of the magical girls' Magitech were lost. The wizard hat Sereno was half destroyed, and the necklace Morale was completely shattered. Could be said that the testing mechanism of this cycle had failed. After Su Xinxing voiced his conjecture, everyone could not help but fall silent. After this, what would happen to this world? Actually, there is still a solution. Su Xinxing thought for a moment and continued. If I'm not wrong, the Holy Ring that gathered the power of more than 700 worlds should be able to affect other worlds. Then as long as you wish for all the worlds to be restored, I will destroy the Holy Ring in the end. That's right, but for some reason the power in the holy ring has become very weak. It's probably less than 40% of its heyday. At this rate, I'm afraid we'll have to purify the 3 disasters and 7 disasters again. The young girl who was still in Su Shenxing's hand added, besides, it's not that easy to completely restore more than 700 worlds with the power of the holy ring alone. Don't worry. What do you think we're here for? Su Shenxing smiled and threw the ring in his hand that had turned black due to the evil of more than 700 worlds to Mo Li. Come, purify it. Jasmine caught it in one gulp and then held it in her mouth. She puffed up her cheeks and made a gurgling sound. After a short while she spat the holy hoop on the ground with a pay sound. Are you kidding me? The young girl struggled in Su Shenxing's hand again. How can it be purified like this? Is really purified? What's the principle behind this? To put it simply, in the face of greater malice, the malice of the humans in the 700 worlds was nothing. Su Shenxing thought in his heart, but he did not say it out loud. Landlord, pay me. I want dried fish. Emily stuck out her tongue and frowned as if she had eaten something disgusting. Then she acted like a spoiled child to Su Shenxing with an expressionless face. Su Shenxing shook the young girl in his hand. I'll leave her to you. Why? The young girl was startled and said cautiously, I don't have money. Can't you make all kinds of food appear in the mirror world? Su Shenxing asked curiously. That thing will only make you feel full in the mirror world. After you go out you'll return to your original state. You're so useless. Su Shenxing showed a look of disgust. Gee. The young girl made a sound of great shock with onomatopoeia. After she stopped fooling around, Su Shenxing looked at Yuezhing Ningning. What do you think? Yuezhing Ningning hesitated for a moment, then asked hesitantly, after the world is restored to its original state, will the holy ring still have enough energy to fulfill other wishes? No, according to common sense. Before Su Shenxing could answer, the young girl answered with a hint of showing off. Then the girl's expression suddenly dimmed. In short, this thing called the holy ring still needs some time to recharge. You should think about it again. Su Shenxing did not rush her. It's okay to maintain the status quo. Making a wish to restore the damaged magic device, revive your friends and continue this cycle is also an option. We're just passers-by. The right to choose is in your hands. I'm using my will to control the direction of this world. Isn't this unfair to others? Yuezhing Ningning asked in a low voice. Because you saved the world. In fact, most of the time the future of a world is not decided by the majority. Often, a few people's inspiration, idea or even impulse can make the future of the entire human race go in a completely different direction. As the savior of this world, you have the right to make your own decision. After picking up the holy ring from the ground and wiping it on the corner of his clothes, Su Shenxing handed it to the girl who looked away. That's it. Chapter 343. Is this really okay? Qin Xingyan asked Su Shenxing. They had now left the mirror world and returned to the normal world. Because after the big hole accident, the government only had time to build a batch of temporary housing, and the inventory of refugees was not completely completed. So Su Shenxing and the others easily disguised themselves as refugees and avoided the investigation of their identity by the government staff. At this time they were taking shelter from the rain in a coffee shop. By the way, the money for drinks and snacks was provided by Mei Weiner. In addition, there was a considerable amount of accommodation expenses, which was said to be in return for taking in Yuezhing Ningning when they were in the original world. Su Shenxing was too lazy to care about the relationship between the magical girls in the circle of nobles, so he had no qualms about expropriating them. What did you say? Is the mousse cake not delicious? Su Shenxing forked the strawberry on his strawberry layer cake with a fork and said while pretending to be crazy. That's not what I meant. In fact, senior, you know what I mean, right? Qin Xingyan said with dissatisfaction, but looking at Su Shenxing's innocent face, he could only sigh in the end. Is it really okay to give such an important choice to that child? She is the savior of this world. What's wrong with letting her decide the direction of this world? Seeing that Qin Xingyan was so clear, Su Shenxing could not avoid the topic and could only answer pretentiously. But this choice is too painful, right? When Qin Xingyan thought of the choice facing the other party, he was a little sad. If she chose to resurrect her friend, then nothing would change, and the tragic cycle of magical girls would continue until a certain generation of magical girls failed to defeat the three disasters and led to the destruction of the world. At the same time, as a chain reaction, more than 700 other worlds would also be affected. Destruction was unlikely. After all, every world had the ability to be self-consistent, and it was only a matter of time before it became a complete low-level world again. It was estimated that the humans and other creatures in those worlds would have to welcome a mass extinction. Based on Yuezhing Ningning's personality, even if she chose this option, she wouldn't be able to live a happy life. She would probably be depressed for the rest of her life because of her selfishness. The other option was to give up on reviving his friends. With the help of Su Shenxing, he could restore all the worlds, including this one, to their original state. Although this choice was good from a righteous point of view for Lu Zheng and Ningning who made this choice, they would probably live in guilt for their friends for the rest of their lives. No matter which one it wasn't a happy ending. No matter which one it was, it would lead to a tragic ending for the girl. For the girl who protected this world, this choice was too cruel, wasn't it? Hoo. However, Su Shenxing revealed a strange owl-like smile. As expected of Xingyan, a dream. She's so kind. Senior, please don't try to fool me like this. Qin Xingyan looked helplessly at Su Shenxing, who was laughing weirdly. She furrowed her brows in confusion. I'm being serious. Hey, I won't joke with you. Su Shenxing shrugged. I hate bad endings the most. ? Qin Xingyan showed a strange expression because of Su Shenxing's random words. So, I've actually given her the key to open the path of happy endings. Now it's up to her to find out. Qin Xingyan, who did not expect to get such an answer, showed a surprised expression. While trying to guess what the so-called key was, the girl also vaguely noticed a trace of disappointment hidden under Su Shenxing's strange smile. Is it because he has experienced a bad ending before so he hates it? What did Senior experience in the past? Until now, Qin Xingyan suddenly realized that she didn't seem to understand Su Shenxing's past at all. Qin Xingyan was aware of this before, but in the past she didn't have any intention of understanding it at all. At that time she was able to restrain her curiosity because she just followed the instructions of the group of elders in the Bailu temple and subconsciously regarded herself as Su Shenxing's vassal. Her feelings for Su Shenxing weren't that deep. But since when did she suddenly want to understand the man in front of her? After thinking for a while, Qin Xingyan vaguely felt that she had been a little restless ever since Song Yu confessed to Su Shenxing at the school anniversary celebration. If I ask Senior, will he tell me about his past? While she was faintly looking forward to it, Qin Xingyan was more afraid of failure. If she failed, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to pull herself together. She didn't want the relationship between the two to become awkward because of this. If there was no way to go further, it didn't matter if they maintained their current relationship. What's wrong? Why do you look so serious? Su Shenxing, who didn't notice the complicated feelings of a young girl, asked curiously. No, it's nothing. It's just that only now did I understand how brave and strong Miss Song Yu is. Qin Xingyan replied seriously. What? Su Shenxing, who didn't know why Song Yu was brought up, was dumbfounded. Waiter, this and this. Mo Li, who was on the side, completely ignored the two people exchanging glances and pointed at the waiter on the menu. I don't want these, give me a portion of everything else. Oh, so bold. Since that's the case, I'll also order a portion. The young girl who was brought out of the mirror world by Su Shenxing saw this and simply gave up thinking. Stop. Do you two want us to sleep on the streets tonight? Outside the window it was drizzling. The silk nightgown slid down her body, revealing her well-trained but still delicate body nourished by magic. With her back facing the light source, her jade-like beautiful body glowed with a faint white light. It was supposed to be like this. Senior, what's going on? Mei Weiner, who was still a little shy, had a look of disbelief on her face. On Lu Zhengning's body, there was a white substance that looked like plaster that was unevenly distributed. No, rather than saying that they were distributed, it was more accurate to say that part of his body had turned into white stone. In that world I was already a person who had died once. Yuezhing Ningning said slowly. It was just that Sereno Ling and the others pushed me out of that place. Because I was their last hope. However, I betrayed them. I can't bring them back. So I can only go over and apologize to them. Senior. Mei Weiner hugged Yuezhing Ningning. For the first time she felt that the powerful senior she had always yearned for was actually so petite and weak. Her body was clearly trembling because of the fear of death, but she still chose to protect the world she loved. Senior was so weak but so strong. Senior, we don't want to protect the world anymore. Let's use the holy ring to make a wish and heal you. This way Senior Ling and Senior Yi can come back. Even if we meet the nightmares or the incarnation of disaster, we can continue to fight together. We can definitely protect this world with our own hands. Let's not care about the future, the people from another world or the other worlds. However, she was not so strong. Mei Weiner cried as she begged Yuezhing Ningning. Because from the beginning to the end, my only wish was to stand by your side. It doesn't matter if I'm not the most important person in your life. It doesn't matter if I can only look at you from afar. However, I can't bear to be separated from you forever. She had already experienced the pain of losing something once. She did not want to experience the feeling of her heart being hollowed out again. Weiner, you're really greedy. If she did that, no one would be saved. Yuezhing Ningning laughed bitterly in her heart. This isn't greed. It's my hope. Mei Weiner hugged Yuezhing Ningning tightly, as if she was afraid that if she let go she would disappear. I know that I can never compare to Senior Ling. But, Senior Ningning, you're my hope too. Weiner. At this moment the door to the room was opened again. The bath water is ready. Ningning, Zhu Shutong, who had pushed the door open, saw the situation in the room and was stunned for a moment. After a long while she laughed dryly and left the room. Well, you guys continue. I'm going to take a bath first. Wait, it's not like that. Mei Weiner wiped the tears off her face and rushed towards Zhu Shutong. Damn it, Ningning can't satisfy you and you want to drag me down with you? Stop it, I'm a straight girl. Zhu Shutong struggled with all her might. That's why it's not like that. Even for cartoons I only watched The World's First Love, Greta, Tokyo Babylon, and Mulatto. These aren't for straight girls. It's better to say that the smell of decay has already drifted out. Xiao Weiner, you actually know all this. Everyone is curious. Seeing the two of them strangely entangled together, Yuezhing Ningning, who had put on her nightgown again, suddenly burst out laughing. Senior. Mei Weiner was stunned. Yes, it's not good to give up hope so easily. Yuezhing Ningning took a deep breath and patted her cheeks. Sorry, I was too pessimistic just now. It wasn't like me. Now that I think about it, there seems to be something hidden in the words of that otherworld lord. I want to take a gamble. She then looked at the dazed Mei Weiner. Weiner, can you come and help me? Leave it to me, Senior Ningning. Thus, the girl immediately revealed a blissful smile. Before you say something like that, get off me first. Chapter 344. Oh. Have you made your decision? The next morning, Su Xinxing had just gone downstairs to have breakfast when he saw the three girls waiting in the hotel lobby. His gaze swept past the other two and landed on Yuezhing Ningning's face. Although she still looked a little haggard, the girl's face was full of determination. It did not look like she was ready to die. I thought you would continue to hesitate for a day or two. Because after I went back and thought about it, I realized that there was no need to be distressed. The girl sat upright on the sofa in the hotel lobby, looking at Su Xinxing with a very serious gaze. Without the slightest confusion she said, So I came here. Then let me hear your choice. Since it was the answer that she came up with after a day of serious consideration, Su Xinxing did not intend to treat it casually. Instead, he sat on the sofa next to her and waited for her answer with a serious expression. He planned to take the corresponding action according to her answer. You've said it before, right? The so-called magical girl. Everything we did before was actually using the hope of the seven of us to fight against the malice of the 700 worlds. Although the expression on her face did not change, Su Xinxing noticed that the girl's hands were tightly clenched into fists. This subconscious action undoubtedly showed that she was in a very nervous state. Thus, he smiled gently, giving the other party the courage to continue speaking. Since the Holy Ring is a wish-granting machine that collects the malice of humans and purifies it to be used as a source of magic to fulfill wishes, then is there any way to collect the hope of humans? She took a deep breath and tried to ease her nervousness. Then she continued, if the persistence of the 7 of us can withstand the malice of all humans in the 700 worlds, then if we can collect the hope of others as a source of magic, can we do something similar to the Holy Ring? Seeing that Su Xinxing did not seem to say anything, the girl could not help but feel a little uneasy. But she still continued, whether it's sadness or despair, even after purification, these human malice or negative residue are not suitable to save the world. Hope should be the power that supports the normal operation and development of the world. That's what I think. Perhaps because Su Xinxing was a little indifferent, Yuezhing Ningning's voice gradually became less confident. At this moment Mei Wan-er and Zhu Shutong held her hands tightly. Their fingers interlocked and the warmth of their palms was transmitted to her heart. It was warm. Therefore she did not care that she might attract other people's confused gazes and said firmly, I want to save the world, whether it is the world we are in or the more than 700 deformed worlds. But at the same time I didn't want to give up on my friends and my life. No matter how hard it is, I want to do it. You want to have both? You're really greedy. Su Xinxing sighed with a tone that was either teasing or mocking. Hearing this, Yuezhing Ningning and Mei Wan-er looked at each other and smiled. Then she looked at Su Xinxing again. She did not avoid his gaze and said in a straightforward manner, this is not greed but our hope. Su Xinxing did not speak. The girls were also quietly waiting for his statement, as if they were waiting for the final judgment. Although there was no clear explanation, the incredible things that happened yesterday made them understand that Su Xinxing was the representative of the otherworlders, and at the same time he was probably the strongest among them. Ha ha ha. After a long time Su Xinxing suddenly laughed. Hope is the fire and human beings are the grassland. As long as the grassland is still there, the fire will sooner or later turn into a prairie fire. Even if hope will burn to ashes, there will still be countless people who will throw themselves into it, just to continue the flame of hope. This is human beings, this is the will of human beings. Perhaps the grassland looks very peaceful now, but sooner or later, a despairing monster like you definitely wouldn't understand. He did not know how long ago, but the words that once rang in his ears once again awakened in his mind. Su Xinxing did not expect to hear such words in such a place. He could not help but laugh. He did not know why he laughed, but he did not allow himself to show any other emotions besides smiling. Humans are really interesting, dear guest, please don't make such a creepy laugh, okay? It will affect the other guests. The hotel's front desk clerk said to Su Xinxing with a fake smile. Oh sorry. Thus our protagonist immediately withdrew his barbell-like smile. What saves the world is not despair but hope. After the girls were stunned by his sudden laughter, Su Xinxing whispered softly as if he was muttering to himself. That's right, no, it should be said that what you think is beyond my expectations. Then he said to the nervous girls. In fact, the keek that Su Xinxing left referred to the question that Yuezhing Ningning asked in the mirror world before. After the holy ring is used to repair the world, can you still make other wishes? At that time the one who answered her was the magic girl, not Su Xinxing himself. In fact, there was a loophole in this. Even if the 700 worlds were restored to normal, the holy ring itself could continue to collect the malice of the people in this world. Although the charging speed would be much slower, it did not need to be fully charged according to the size of the wish. As long as it was under Su Xinxing's supervision, the holy ring could not continue to distort the world. When Yuezhing Ningning's wish was fulfilled, it would not be difficult to destroy it. The only drawback of this method was that it required Su Xinxing to stay here for a long time. However, during this period of time, Su Xinxing did not have any major issues. Plus, he learned from Mei Wan-er that the flow of time in this world was slightly different from his original world. Yuezhing Ningning only stayed in that world for 2 days, but 2 weeks had passed in this world, so there was no need to rush. And even if this method did not work, there was still Mo Li as a last resort. As long as the seal was lifted to the second stage, Mo Li's great wishing spell could resurrect people. Unlike Su Xinxing's resurrection physical, which required the world to have an organization like hell, Mo Li's resurrection magic was more convenient. It was just that the aftermath would be a bit troublesome. However, Su Xinxing originally planned to strengthen Mo Li's seal some time ago, so it did not matter. In other words, Yuezhing Ningning's expression suddenly brightened. That's right, you pass. Su Shinxing grinned and gave her a thumbs up. Next, let's teach those 700 or so spoiled little guys a lesson. Chapter 345. After eating and drinking to their fill, Su Shinxing and the others returned to the mirror world. However, because the young girl who created and maintained the mirror world was right beside them, Su Shinxing instructed them to leave out the fancy places, just make the space as stable as possible. The mountain-like dessert toys in the mirror world disappeared. Emoli expressed his regret, and were replaced by a boundless pure white space. Then Su Shinxing took out the holy ring. Actually, according to the past, the sacred ring would need about 50 to 60 years to fully recharge. However, this cycle system had been broken due to the previous loss of the sacred ring, which led to the unrestrained flow of malice from other worlds into this world. The sacred ring's recharging speed had greatly increased, and with the addition of Jasmine's little tricks, the sacred ring was more or less fully recharged in just one day. As for the purification, awu gulu gulu ba. Okay, the purification was complete. Every time I see this purification process I feel a little strange. The young magical girl couldn't accept it and lay on the ground. Why did the magical girls in the past fight to the death? Well, at least they used their own methods to protect the world they loved. Su Shinxing said perfunctorily. At the same time he also handed the holy ring to Yuezhing Ningning, who looked a little nervous. Relax, don't be too nervous. Just think of it as a normal wish and sink your consciousness into the ring. Leave the rest to us. Yes, relax, don't be too tense or else you might not be able to insert it. Zhu Shutong said seriously. Sister Shutong, please shut up. Melissa said coldly. While Lil Wan'er's stare hurts. Because of the two's antics, Yuezhing Ningning also relaxed. She took the holy ring, then held it in the palm of her hand and put it close to her forehead. She closed her eyes and stood there motionlessly. A moment later, many golden specks of light that looked like fireflies appeared around her body, surrounding her and emitting a dazzling and holy light. To be exact, there were 732 light spots. Emily, mark it for me, Su Shinxing said in a clear voice while summoning Roland Dur. The moment he pulled out the holy sword, the magic girl who was still maintaining the mirror world couldn't help but shiver. Although the light spots looked like the light and shadow effect when making a wish, in fact each light spot represented a world. They were connected to the sacred ring in Yuezhing Ningning's hand in terms of concept and law, and when the girl made a wish they shared the wish with the girl's original world. Hearing Su Shinxing's instructions, Emoli raised his small hand, and wisps of starlight that ordinary people couldn't see clearly appeared in front of Su Shinxing's eyes. At first glance it looked like Yuezhing Ningning was in a huge cocoon of starlight. Landlord, 5 seconds. At least, it doesn't matter how I become, but at least, I have to let the people I care about be happy. As if someone pushed her from behind, Yuezhing Ningning once again gritted her teeth and faced the pain. She held on to her heart and continued to make her wish. And just as she was ready to be attacked by the next wave of pain, countless figures stood in front of her, helping her to bear the resentment of the worlds that seemed to be able to tear her soul apart. It's not just your wish, the countless figures said at the same time, but their voices overlapped with each other angrily, turning into the voice of a young and somewhat inarticulate girl. Every generation of magical girls would want to save the world where they were born, grew up, and obtained many important shackles. But no one has ever succeeded. Maybe I was formed because of this strong unwillingness. Even if I don't know the inside story, every magical girl who has fought the 3 calamities and 7 calamities would vaguely feel that something is wrong. Now that things have come to this, our long-cherished wish can finally be fulfilled. How can we let our lovely juniors fall in such a place? The will left behind by the magical girls of the past said together. It's just the resentment of 700 worlds. Since ancient times, the number of magical girls sacrificed to protect the world is far more than this. In the torrent of the world's resentment, countless figures of the magical girls of the past were shattered, but there were still thousands of magical girls standing in front of Yuezhing Ningning, protecting the last magical girl of the world, protecting the last hope of magical girls. Ningning, you've grown up. One of the figures looked at Yuezhing Ningning and said with a smile. Even though Ningning had never seen her before, She could feel the incessant agitation in her blood. Granny. I'm sorry. I couldn't see you being born. But to be able to grow to such a level that I'm so proud of as expected of my granddaughter. The figure smiled and said, although I still have many things to say to you, there's not enough time. I hope you can remember that while there may be some unpleasant things in your life in the future, as long as you can maintain this heart of hope now, no matter how dark the future is, it will be illuminated by you. Granny, don't hesitate. You still have things to do, don't you? That's right, there were still things that she needed to do. With the other's encouragement, Yuezhing Ningning's eyes became incomparably bright. She raised the holy ring in her hands, and with her movement, the holy ring slowly rose like a bright lamp in the girl's dark spiritual world, finally illuminating the entire sky. I, Yuezhing Ningning, hereby make a wish. All worlds shall become one, and their evil thoughts shall no longer flow to other worlds. The world I live in, your wounds shall be healed and there shall be no more pain. All magical girls shall be put to an end here and let everything be the past. Listen to my wish and fulfill it for me, holy ring. Holy ring. The white light filled the whole world and then overflowed from her spiritual world. A huge white beam of light rose from the girl's body into the sky. The mirror world that was collapsing stopped just like that and then slowly recovered. Su Shenxing, who still wanted to help Yuezhing Ningning, also had a surprised expression on his face. He thought that the other party might not be able to survive the attack of the world's resentment, but he didn't expect that before he had time to do anything, the other party had already done it. As if thinking of something, Su Shenxing glanced at the young magical girl lying on the ground next to him, pretending to be dead. Is this the power of hope? Then the expression on his face eased. It's really beyond my expectations to be able to do this. Next, the malice of those worlds can only stay in their own worlds, right? Then what will happen to those worlds? Qin Xingyan asked curiously. Do your own things. Emily looked at the white light in the sky and said slowly, Mr. Landlord said that this is the basic rule. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.